Last time, we covered everything from the beginning of the Elbaf Arc up to chapter 1174. The Holy Knights nearly claimed victory, but Luffy and Loki turned the tide as Loki revealed his gigantic dragon form and the legendary sun god prophecy began to unfold. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I highly recommend watching it first, because this video continues the story directly from where that chapter ended. Before we get started, I have a small favor to ask. If you enjoy these videos and haven't subscribed yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. My biggest goal this year is to reach 100K subscribers, and every single subscription genuinely helps me get one step closer to that milestone. A huge thank you to all of my channel members for supporting the channel. You guys are the reason I can keep making these long, detailed videos. And if you'd like to support the channel even more, you can always become a member as well. If you're only here for the recap, feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp on the screen, because I'm just going to talk with you guys for a minute. First, I just want to say thank you for all the support on the One Piece videos, but I also wanted to ask for your honest feedback. Over the past few months, I've spent hundreds of hours making videos on Dragon Ball, Baki, and My Hero Academia, putting in the same amount of effort and trying to cover every important detail, but those videos didn't receive anywhere near the same support. So please let me know in the comments what you think I'm doing wrong. Is it the thumbnails, the titles, the pacing, the series I choose, or something else entirely? I genuinely read your comments and your feedback helps me improve. If you have some free time after this video, I'd really appreciate it if you checked those videos out as well. A massive amount of work went into making them. The next series I'm most likely going to cover is Dragon Ball Daima. And after that, I'll combine everything into one massive video covering Goku's complete journey from beginning to end. After that, what series should we cover next? Let me know in the comments because I really want this channel to grow together with you guys. I've also already finished making a complete Baki story recap, covering absolutely everything from the beginning all the way to the latest point in the story. The only problem is, the video is almost 20 hours long. It took an insane amount of time to make, and honestly, I'm not sure if I should even release it. Would you guys actually watch a 20-hour Baki recap? Please let me know because your response will decide whether I upload it. Another idea I've been thinking about is starting a dedicated One Piece news series where I cover every new chapter, all the latest news, theories, and discussions surrounding the series. Is that something you'd like to see? Anyway, that's enough of me talking. Thank you all so much for your support, and now, let's continue the story of Elbaf. It seems that releasing the chaotic Prince Loki was actually a genius strategic move after all. The prince is absolutely tearing through everything in his path, effortlessly swatting away those pesky dream monsters as if they were nothing more than flies. Sanji unleashes his blue flames to incinerate the vines holding Robin captive, freeing her from Sommer's grasp and bringing a wave of relief to the Straw Hat crew. Jinbei quickly catches on, realizing that these thorny entanglements have a fatal weakness: intense, high-temperature fire. Even though Robin is finally unshackled and safe for the moment, Robin warns the group that it is far too early to start celebrating their small victory. Sanji completely agrees with her cautious intuition as he has just sensed a massive, overwhelming surge of haki nearby. To make matters worse, deep roars echo through the air, and a gargantuan, mysterious shadow looms ominously right in front of the entire team. The situation is looking incredibly suspicious as the scene shifts. Simultaneously, Loki has transported the children and their parents to a western village near Lord Dajun's location. The poor children are sobbing uncontrollably, begging anyone to save their loved ones. Meanwhile, the local giants are urging Loki to move the kids to a much safer area since the village is in imminent danger. Despite the danger, Loki flat out refuses to help further, arrogantly claiming he has no interest in carrying dead weight on his back. Shortly after this exchange, Lord Jarul officially broadcasts a message to all the citizens of Elbaf, announcing the wonderful news that the missing children have finally been secured and are out of harm's way. The Straw Hats and the Giants erupt in joy upon hearing the announcement. Amidst the chaos, Loki tries his best to kick Luffy off his back, but our rubber captain simply ignores him with his classic carefree attitude. Luffy notices Zoro standing with the other giants and takes a moment to explain that the massive dragon they are witnessing is actually Loki. With Zoro present to handle things on the ground, Luffy no longer has any distractions and can focus entirely on the battle ahead. The Master Swordsman urges Luffy to wipe out those nightmare monsters as fast as possible. Otherwise, these terrifying creatures will completely lay waste to the beautiful land of Elbaf before they know it. While the heroes plan their move, Sommer is absolutely fuming that the children and their parents were rescued by Loki. He is obsessed with his original mission and decides he will force the children to the Holy Land regardless. To ensure the parents don't interfere with his twisted goals, this despicable Holy Knight prepares a wicked trap. The Vile Knight creates 3 specialized thornwire guns, aiming them directly at the innocent parents to clear his path. In a touching show of bravery, the children step forward to shield their families. This sight sends Sommer into a state of twisted ecstasy. He begins to weep tears of joy at the cruel spectacle unfolding before his eyes. Sommer is so overwhelmed with sadistic pleasure that he considers abandoning his mission just to attack the children directly. Ripley desperately begs her son to run for safety, but the brave little boy refuses to leave his mother's side. Just as the deadly thorns are fired, Zoro appears in the nick of time, intercepting and blocking the attack with ease. Luffy can't help but laugh, knowing he can always rely on his incredibly dependable comrade. Zoro's sudden intervention leaves Sommer absolutely livid. Taking advantage of the moment, Luffy reaches into the clouds with his left hand, grabs a literal bolt of lightning, and leaps towards Sommer while casually introducing Zoro to the shocked Holy Knight. After introducing his swordsman, Luffy uses his right hand like a pair of binoculars to perfectly lock onto his target. Sommer is paralyzed with sheer terror, unable to even twitch a muscle. Without hesitation, Luffy unleashes a divine and devastating technique known as the White Lightning Revolving Bullet, aimed directly at the villain. The massive, electrified punch slams into the despicable Holy Knight, engulfing his entire body in a violent surge of lightning. The impact is so ridiculously powerful that Sommer's form seems to shatter under the pressure, sending his teeth flying as his face is brutally contorted and split by the sheer force of the blow. As Sommer is neutralized, the thorny vines constricting the children finally wither away and vanish. Witnessing Luffy's overwhelming display of power, Ripley is moved to tears, biting her lip in pure emotion. She has finally achieved her dream of seeing Luffy's legendary radiant white form with her own 2 eyes. In his Gear 5 state, Luffy looks exactly like the fabled warrior of liberation, Nika. Sommer is stunned to hear Ripley address Luffy by that name, as he always assumed the legends of the Sun God were nothing more than fairy tales for children. Little did he know that the mythical figure actually exists in the flesh. The consequences for the wicked Holy Knight don't end with a punch. As he falls through the air, Loki uses a massive dragon claw to flatten him like a pancake. Nearby, even the brave Dr. Chopper is shaking in his hooves, completely intimidated by the sheer scale of the gargantuan dragon looming over the battlefield. Lord Jarul confirms to everyone that the dragon is indeed Prince Loki, admitting that even he has never seen the prince assume such a terrifying form before. Hearing this, Gabon's mind wanders back to the day Loki departed from the castle. It brings back memories of the dark times following the passing of the late King Harold. After the king's death, Yrul explained to the group the true nature of the devil fruit Loki consumed, the Ryu no Mi model Nidhugger, rare mythical Zoan-type fruit that grants its user the ability to transform into the single largest dragon in the entire world, a creature of truly ancient and terrifying proportions. Interestingly, the dragon's final size is relative to the user's original stature. An ancient giant would become much larger than a standard giant, who in turn would dwarf a human user. Essentially, the bigger the host's body, the greater the potential to unleash the absolute maximum destructive power of this legendary fruit. Jarul elaborates that the Nighawk is a pitch-black dragon capable of breathing devastating bolts of lightning. It is so massive that it can literally blot out the sun, turning broad daylight into pitch-black night. Shanks wonders aloud if the potential for global catastrophe is why the elders decided to forbid anyone from ever eating it. Yrul clarifies that whenever someone attempted to claim the Nidhugger fruit, the guardian hammer Ragnar would intervene to stop them. Elbaf legends speak of a mighty god of war who wielded Ragnar as his primary weapon. This legend is deeply woven into the history of the giant warriors and their ancient traditions. According to Elbaf's ancient legends, the god of war once fought the sun god in a battle that became the stuff of myth. After the god's death, his loyal attendant Ratatoskr came to possess the legendary weapon Ragnir. Legend says Ratatoskr's spirit still resides within the weapon, patiently awaiting his master's return while guarding the power sealed within. Since that ancient era, Ragnir has stood watch over the devil fruit, waiting for a champion strong enough to inherit its power. After centuries of vigilance, the Ragnir has finally fulfilled its duty as a guardian, having selected a new master to wield the dragon's might, and that chosen individual is none other than Loki. Back in the present moment, Loki is relentlessly hunting down the nightmare monsters, sending them fleeing in pure panic. To finish them off in one fell swoop, Loki opens his massive jaws and fires a titanic blast of lightning known as the Thunder Realm attack, lighting up the entire horizon with destructive energy. The prince's devastating breath attack triggers an earth-shattering explosion, followed by a chaotic storm of lightning bolts. The nightmare creatures are virtually annihilated in an instant by this overwhelming show of force. As the monsters vanish, Imu, currently inhabiting Gunko's body, watches the flawless performance of Loki and Luffy with a growing sense of unease. The scene shifts to the Room of Flowers, where the real Imu glares with absolute fury. He finally realizes that the power of Nidhogger has been hidden away in Elbaf all this time, right under his nose. Loki's catastrophic attack is so powerful that it causes the entire land of the giants to tremble and shake violently. As the ground quakes, Frankie is thrown into a panic, completely confused by the unfolding events. Meanwhile, Lilith retrieves a specialized device from the container holding Vegapunk's remains. Fortunately, she had left the machine outside of the school area, ensuring it remained completely undamaged during the earlier skirmishes. This impressive machine is the Universal Converter, or Odyssey for short. Lilith observes that Elbaf is a land practically overflowing with natural energy, which leads her to believe that implementing advanced hovering and flight technology here would be surprisingly easy and highly effective for the crew. The brilliant doctor is actually quite shocked that Frankie has never experimented with energy sources more potent than simple cola. As the conversation continues, the surrounding fires grow more intense, spreading rapidly. Usopp is paralyzed with fear as he gazes upon the colossal dragon, which is several times larger than even Kaido. Despite its terrifying size, the sight of Luffy casually riding the beast confirms the dragon is an ally to the Straw Hats. Nami isn't at all surprised by her captain's reckless behavior, but with the children safe, she and Jinbei decide to take immediate action to extinguish the fires threatening the library and the local school. While Nami and Jinbei focus on firefighting, Robin and Sanji rush over to check on Sol's condition. Upon reaching the scene, Nami commands Zeus to generate a massive downpour to quench the raging flames. Zeus has been storing plenty of moisture, so he's more than ready to unleash a heavy rainstorm on the inferno. Sanji is absolutely smitten watching Nami take charge, his admiration for the navigator reaching new heights of infatuation. Robin places all her hope in Nami and Zeus, knowing that the library and school are the most vital cultural treasures of Elbaf, and must be preserved at any cost from the encroaching fire. Just as they start, the villainous Killingham appears with a horde of nightmare monsters to block their path. He maliciously prevents Zeus from putting out the fire, arrogantly declaring that historical records and world history books are nothing more than useless trash that deserves to be reduced to ash. Nami tries to scream a warning to her cloud companion, but she's a second too late. In a shocking turn, a massive serpent named Linum swallows Zeus whole. Both Nami and Sol are horrified by this setback. Sanji is beyond furious, as Zeus was their only realistic hope for stopping the fire before everything burned down. Sanji glares at the enemy floating in the sky with a smug grin, while Jinbei confirms that this newcomer is definitely one of the 3 devils mentioned by Lord Jarul. Right as the tension peaks, Lilith and Frankie arrive on the scene to provide some much-needed backup for the struggling team. Lilith immediately tosses the Odyssey device into the heart of the inferno to absorb the thermal energy. In a flash, the device sucks the heat away, not only killing the fire but leaving the entire library and school completely encased in ice. Killingham is caught totally off guard, breaking out into a nervous sweat at this turn of events. Robin and Sol are confused by the sudden freezing, but they are immensely grateful that the historical archives are safe. Meanwhile, Lilith expertly funnels all that captured heat energy into Frankie's cola supply, upgrading it into super heavy coca, and tossing the high-powered bottle back to our favorite cyborg. Frankie catches the bottle and can feel it vibrating with so much power he thinks it might actually explode. Lilith is fascinated by Frankie's body, noting that his cybernetic structure is as impressive as a pacifista. She finds it hilarious and amazing that he manages to achieve such results using nothing but sugary soda as fuel. Lilith is determined to push the Straw Hat shipwright's power to the next level. She guarantees that with this new fuel, Frankie's capabilities will absolutely skyrocket. Meanwhile, from deep within the belly of the giant serpent, poor Zeus can be heard wailing and pleading for Nami to come and save him from being digested. Hearing her cloud friend's desperate cries, Nami immediately sprints toward the monster. Robin asks Saul to help her get closer to the library, and he agrees without a second thought. He knows how much this means to her, as the entire physical and historical legacy of Ohara is housed within those walls. Killingham flashes a wicked, sinister grin and commands his nightmare serpent to devour the entire library. He wants to strip Elbaf of every ounce of hope, believing that a new world order can only truly begin by completely severing all ties to the past and erasing history itself. To protect Nami, Jinbei rushes the serpent to liberate Zeus from its jaws. Killingham sneers with pure prejudice at the sight of a fishman, calling the entire race a disgusting species that makes him want to vomit. He even mocks Jinbei, glad he is wearing a helmet so he doesn't have to breathe the same air. The arrogant knight doesn't even recognize Jinbei as a former warlord of the sea, showing just how out of touch he is. Sanji is absolutely livid at the insults hurled at his crewmate. The elitist, narrow-minded logic of the Celestial Dragons is truly pathetic, and Sanji decides it's time to make him pay for his stupidity. Empowered by the super heavy coca, Frankie launches himself into the air with a spectacular leap that defies gravity. He feels a massive surge of energy coursing through his mechanical systems. With this newfound strength, the Straw Hat shipwright is supremely confident he can take down these beasts with a single strike. Our powered-up trio, Sanji, Jinbei, and Frankie, prepare to unleash a coordinated assault that will blow the enemy away. They each prepare their signature moves, focusing their combined might into a devastating barrage aimed at the Nightmare Serpent and the floating knight above them. Jinbei's fierce Fishman Karate Vagabond drill and Frankie's high-impact strong right smash into the Nightmare Snake, forcing it to cough up Zeus. Simultaneously, Sanji moves like a blur of fire, catching Killingham completely off guard with his incredible speed and precision timing. Sanji's powerful Konkase kick shatters the knight's helmet and slams his head into the ground with satisfying force. It's a truly magnificent and flashy finish. Meanwhile, in the western village, the brutal melee continues as the warriors of Elbaf struggle against their own corrupted, brainwashed comrades. Hajuddin and his team are feeling helpless because the corrupted giants possess a terrifying ability to regenerate almost instantly after being cut. It breaks their hearts to keep striking down their respected elders, even if those seniors are currently being controlled by a dark, malevolent force. The warriors wish there was some magical way to restore everyone to their true selves. Suddenly, the legendary captains Dory and Brogy snap back to their senses. The two giants are trembling and gasping for air, clearly suffering from the immense mental and physical toll of the brainwashing they endured. They are consumed by shame for the disrespectful things they said to the venerable Elder Jarul. In a tragic display of giant pride, they decide to end their own lives in a mutual suicide pact to prevent their honor from being stained any further by the corruption controlling their actions. Dory and Brogy have shared a lifetime of unforgettable adventures and battles together. They vow to die as true warriors of Elbaf, carrying their pride to the grave. Watching the two legendary leaders prepare to kill one another, the rest of the giants and Zoro are thrown into a state of absolute shock and horror. Nobody can wrap their heads around why the duo would make such a drastic, tragic choice. But then, something miraculous happens. Thanks to the strange magic of Imu, Dory and Brogy's bodies suddenly flip in reverse. They are instantly restored to their normal states, with their injuries completely healed as if by magic. The two captains look around in confusion, totally lost as to what just occurred. The onlookers erupt in cheers, ecstatic that their leaders are safe. This bizarre event reveals the secret to breaking the dark curse. The subjects must technically die for the reversal effect to kick in and save them from the brainwashing. It turns out that even if the corrupted giants are beaten to a pulp, they will simply reset to their original healthy selves once the flip occurs. Knowing this, Zoro and the warriors of Elbaf no longer have to hold back their strength. They are finally free to unleash their most lethal and devastating techniques without any guilt. The group shares a series of mischievous, sly grins, pretending to be heartbroken about having to strike their comrades while actually feeling a secret thrill at being able to fight at full power. And right now, absolute chaos is completely wrapping itself around the land of Elbaf. Over here, worried parents are desperately wrapping up bandages on the wounded, while simultaneously hustling their little ones away to find some sort of safe shelter. However, catching sight of those legendary giant pirate warriors locked in fierce combat, a few of the bolder kids are getting incredibly hyped up and actually want to stick around just to keep on watching, tracking the ridiculously epic and cool action display of their heroes. Meanwhile, in another corner of the battlefield, those corrupted, shadow-infused giant warriors are actively trying to seduce the legendary duo of Dory and Brogy back into their old demonic ways. It turns out that having godlike, extraordinary strength combined with absolute immortality has truly captivated their minds. And right on cue, a pitch-black corrupted giant who had been completely consumed by darkness uses a massive trident to launch a brutal attack directly at his own captain. This thrusting blow is so insanely powerful that it shatters a defensive shield and pins itself deep into the arm of the blue demon, Dory. Despite this horrific injury, Dory doesn't even flinch or show a single speck of pain. Instead, he just feels an overwhelming wave of disappointment seeing his former crew members completely cast aside their warrior pride just to become lowly puppets and lackeys for the devil. What an absolute disgrace to the name of Elbaf's proud giant warriors. Meanwhile, over in a completely different area, two more shadow-corrupted giants are gearing up to attack Gabon and our little Dr. Chopper. Luckily, Kashi has stepped up onto the scene to shield the two of them. However, he finds himself totally unable to bring himself to unleash his full, brutal strength against comrades who once shared life and death bonds alongside him on the high seas. Sensing the danger, Gabon warns Kashi that he needs to stay extremely alert, because if he gets trapped right in the middle of this curse, he could easily end up transformed into a mindless demon just like them. Watching Kashi stubbornly refuse to throw a single punch at the two corrupted giants who are closing in, Chopper starts to feel an intense wave of worry washing over him. Now, in complete and utter contrast to Kashi's hesitation, Brogy has actually figured out a way to break this dark curse, so he doesn't hesitate to swing his massive axe and slice right through his own bewitched crew members. Hajrudin, Dory, Samson, and Zoro are also following suit, doing the exact same devastating thing, unleashing the most crushing and violent offensive attacks they can muster. Under this relentless onslaught, the possessed bodies of the shadow giants are literally shattered into countless fragments. On the other side of the battlefield, Mr. Goldberg can clearly sense the pure, unadulterated joy radiating from Zoro's group as they happily slash away. Meanwhile, poor Kashi is slowly running out of steam as he takes one heavy, consecutive blow after another. Unable to just stand by and watch his friend get beat up, Chopper decides to pop a rumble ball and instantly transform into his massive, towering monster point form. Without wasting a single second, our little doctor swings his colossal arm and delivers a devastating slap straight across the face of one of those shadow giants. That blow and its immense physics-defying power from the Straw Hat's doctor completely purges and blows away the demonic spirit dwelling inside his opponent. Right after that, the giant is caught in a reversing magic circle and snaps back to his normal, peaceful self. Chopper is absolutely dumbfounded by this outcome, completely clueless as to how he even managed to pull off such an incredible feat. Changing locations, Nami is busy feeding her storm cloud Zeus some delicious black balls to get his energy reserves back up to full. Meanwhile, that annoying holy knight, Gillingham, has been sliced clean in half by Sanji. Jinbei is currently holding down his head, while his lower body is being tightly wrapped up and bound by Frankie. And just as the crew of the Straw Hat Pirates predicted, once his body is split apart, this arrogant holy knight is completely unable to regenerate his physical form. Gillingham is absolutely seething with rage, spitting out a non-stop stream of curses because these mere pirates dared to defy a mighty celestial dragon. Even though Sanji just gave him an absolute beatdown, he stubbornly continues to insult Jinbei's fishman heritage with vile words. Sanji scoffed, unable to believe that the so-called Holy Land is actually guarded by such pathetic weaklings. Frankie just bursts out laughing, pointing out that their crew has simply grown way too powerful for these guys to handle. After all, they are the elite members of a Yonko, Monkey D. Luffy. However, even knowing this is the case, Sanji still finds it incredibly annoying that absolute weaklings like Gillingham could actually cause so much trouble for the mighty land of Elbaf. Hearing this insult, the captured Holy Knight goes completely ballistic, screaming and swearing that he will make the entire Straw Hat crew pay a painful price. Meanwhile, the level-headed Jinbei points out that there is still another active Holy Knight running around free and uncontrolled, meaning the whole group needs to keep their guard up and stay alert. To make matters worse, massive fires are still raging across the landscape, which is why Nami is urging Zeus to keep pouring down heavy rain to douse those wild flames. At this very moment, Loki has soared right over to where the Straw Hat crew is gathered. Having completely incinerated almost all of those pesky dream monsters, the crew members are left utterly jaw-dropped by the colossal scale of this dark dragon. Honestly, its massive size is practically a 9 out of 10 compared to a giant sea king. Sanji is especially stunned to discover that this beast towering right in front of them is actually Prince Loki. On the other hand, Frankie thinks it's absolutely fantastic that their captain has managed to recruit such a top-tier, high-quality beast to their side. But Nami? She is having none of it, looking absolutely furious at the reckless antics of Luffy and Loki. She is incredibly annoyed that Luffy has once again gone and befriended an absolute weirdo. Even though Loki managed to wipe out the dream beasts, his fiery dragon breath has only made the surrounding flames burn 10 times worse. If he keeps this up, Elbaf is going to burn to the ground long before they can even defeat those holy knights. She yells at them to get a grip and start acting sensible for once. Getting absolutely reamed by Nami, Luffy just stands there with a completely blank, pitiful expression on his face. Seeing him look so sad, the little squirrel tries to comfort Luffy by gently placing a paw on his back, which looks incredibly hilarious. Deflecting the blame, Luffy immediately points his finger at Loki, whining that it's all his fault that he got a harsh earful from their navigator. The giant prince gets completely offended by this, instantly opening his massive jaws to blast a bolt of lightning straight at Luffy, just to vent his frustration. He was only trying to wipe out the threats plaguing Elbaf, so he has absolutely no clue why he's being chewed out by this rubber boy's bossy crewmate made of rubber. However, seeing Luffy shrug off that high-voltage lightning blast without a single scratch leaves Loki utterly dumbfounded. Of course, if that attack had actually done any damage, Luffy would have definitely thrown a massive counterpunch right back at the prince. Now, shifting over to another area, we see Brook and Usopp locked in a desperate struggle, fighting for their lives against Emu. The two of them have been absolutely battered, beaten to a pulp, and left in complete tatters. Brook is pleading with Usopp to retreat immediately, warning him that this enemy is on an entirely different level of danger, and that he only stayed behind for his own personal reasons. But Usopp, displaying incredible heart, drags his broken body back up to fight. No way is he going to abandon his own comrades in a desperate situation like this. He screams that a true warrior of the sea never turns his back and flees. Usopp has spent his entire life dreaming of setting foot on Elbaf. He deeply respects the giants and is absolutely furious that these arrogant holy knights dare to look down on them. They are nothing but cowards who resort to kidnapping helpless children in the dark, too terrified to fight face to face, instead hiding behind mindless dream monsters. On top of that, they have the audacity to brainwash these proud, noble giant warriors, forcing them into a tragic civil war of self-destruction. It is incredibly pathetic, cowardly, and downright filthy. Seething with rage after being insulted straight to his face by Usopp, Emu charges forward and unloads a brutal beating on him. Brook tries to leap in to save his young comrade, but he is instantly blasted backward by an overwhelming force. Somehow, Usopp drags himself up once more and raises his trusty slingshot high. He declares that the true warriors of Elbaf fight honorably with their own swords and shields, willing to lay down their lives just to protect their pride. If you really want to conquer Elbaf, then fight like a real warrior instead of hiding like cowards and face us head on, you spineless weaklings. However, Emu simply delivers a cold, chilling reply, stating that a true ruler has absolutely no need to dirty their own hands. Usopp prepares to fire off one of his signature Skull Pop green star bombs. But in the blink of an eye, Imu teleports right in front of him, striking with brutal speed before Usopp can even react. In the next instant, a monstrous earth-shattering explosion erupts, sending violent shockwaves through the entire area. This devastating blast leaves Usopp critically wounded, causing him to collapse unconscious right alongside the fallen Buzz. Luffy is completely horrified when he spots his two dear comrades lying defeated and broken on the ground. Riding on Loki's back, he leaps straight down into the crater to check on them. Loki immediately senses the chilling presence of the enemy, recognizing him as the source of that monstrous haki that felt like it reached all the way down into the depths of the underworld. Fuming with rage, Luffy glares at the mysterious foe with eyes that could kill. Since Loki has absolutely no intention of letting these invaders leave Elbaf alive, he decides to team up with Luffy. Imu coldly presents a dark ultimatum to the duo, demanding they either kneel and submit or face immediate death. Nika, Mihawk, and Imu, a clash between these three titans, is bound to tear the entire world apart. Not wanting to let the injured Usopp and Brook get caught in the deadly crossfire, Luffy quickly evacuates them back to the safety of the crew. Frankie immediately offers to step in and back up his captain, but Luffy quickly warns the Iron Cyborg to keep his distance. Loki is fighting with zero restraint, meaning anyone who gets too close could easily get caught in his wild, destructive attacks. Right now, the cursed giant prince is charging up a massive, crackling sphere of lightning to blast straight at Imu. This triggers a memory from many years ago, when Imu first received reports about a mysterious ghost ship belonging to the giants. Its captain was said to be a colossal figure who would appear and disappear like a phantom within the thick ocean fog, sporting incredibly bizarre and ominous markings all over his body that looked completely unnatural. What made this enigmatic figure truly terrifying was that he exclusively hunted and destroyed world government vessels. Coupled with rumors of a legendary winged beast soaring through the stormy skies, Imu finally pieces the puzzle together and realizes that the flying dragon was actually Loki's beast form. In a flash, the devastating energy blast unleashed by Loki completely obliterates a massive chunk of the surrounding landscape, though Imu effortlessly glides away to dodge the strike. Watching this, Luffy's blood boils with rage over what this monster did to Brook and Usopp. Fueled by this anger, Luffy declares that he wants to take down Imu with his own two hands instead of letting Loki steal the spotlight. But just as Luffy leaps back into the fray, Imu suddenly detaches from Gunko, transforming into a bizarre, amorphous black shadow entity, exactly like the horror seen back at God Valley. This terrifying sight leaves Luffy completely wide-eyed with shock. Imu sneers, uttering, "If only you pests would simply vanish from the face of this earth, just like Rox-D Zebek once did." Right after saying this, he unleashes a dark devilish contract, shooting out two pitch-black tentacles that stab directly into Luffy's body and pierce right into Loki's massive dragon head. Imu intends to siphon away a portion of their lifespans, offering them immense, corrupted power in return, with the catch that they must brutally slaughter each other right before his eyes. However, instead of succumbing to the dark curse and turning into mindless demons like Rox did, Luffy and Loki don't show a single sign of being corrupted at all. Looking incredibly annoyed by this cheap trick, the powerful duo casually slaps Imu's dark tentacles away. Deep down, Imu already suspected that the legendary forces of Nika and Mihawk would be completely immune to his dark magic. Refusing to give their foe even a second to recover, Luffy immediately unleashes a colossal high-speed Gatling of ultra-powerful punches. Luffy's rapid-fire barrage hits with such sheer intensity that it literally riddles Imu's shadow body with gaping holes. Meanwhile, Loki realizes that landing a direct hit on Imu is nearly impossible in his giant dragon form due to the massive size difference, so he decides to revert back to his human size and commands his trusted squirrel to transform into his legendary hammer. Loki shouts at Luffy to get the heck out of the way, and with a monstrous swing, he aims the massive weapon straight at the ruler of the world, unleashing an absolutely devastating amount of force. Caught completely off guard, Imu is instantly frozen solid inside a colossal block of ice generated by the magical weapon. Loki's incredible finishing move leaves Luffy totally awestruck and highly impressed. Although our rubber boy still wants to keep fighting, his exhausting Gear 5 state has officially hit its absolute limit. And right after that, the poor guy deflates into a wrinkled, shriveled up old man, struggling to catch his breath. Even though Loki still has no clue who this mysterious intruder actually is, he figures that keeping him frozen solid is the absolute best way to keep him pinned down for now. Furthermore, holding that giant dragon form for such a long period of time has completely drained Loki's own stamina reserves. But thanks to the combined efforts of Prince Loki and the Straw Hat Pirates, the terrified citizens of Elbaf no longer have to worry about those creepy dream monsters or the invading Holy Knights. The only thing left for the citizens to handle now is putting out the massive forest fires that Loki accidentally started with his reckless dragon breath. Even though the Wild Prince successfully eliminated the monster threat, his destructive methods are still pretty hard for the locals to swallow. Yet, upon discovering that Loki wasn't actually the one who murdered King Harold, the people of Elbaf start feeling incredibly guilty for ever doubting and labeling him a criminal. Even so, this eccentric prince remains just as much of a colossal headache as he has always been. Right now, Nami is busy ordering Zeus to conjure up massive rainstorms, while Jinbei utilizes the nearby sea waters close to the academy to help douse the remaining fires. Lilith is also doing her absolute best to aid the Elbaf reconstruction efforts, though it seems her handy multi-converter has its own frustrating limits. Meanwhile, in a completely different part of the island, Saul and Robin have successfully made their way inside the ancient library. Although the area shows clear signs of being scorched by fire, the absolute shocker is that the massive bookshelves are entirely empty with not a single trace of ash in sight. Saul quickly deduces that the librarian, Biblo, has vanished, suggesting he likely used his abilities to shrink the entire catalog of books and transport them to a secure location. Back with the Straw Hat group, Sanji sighs, noting that if they had only put the pieces together a bit sooner, this entire situation might never have escalated to such a chaotic degree. Frankie chimes in, reminding him that they arrived on Elbaf purely to hang out and bond with the giants, which is why they had their guard completely down. It's a massive stroke of luck that they only had to face 3 Holy Knights, allowing the Straw Hat crew to successfully manage the threat. Meanwhile, a captured Gillingham is left thoroughly baffled by the complete lack of movement from their supreme leader, Emu. Over in the western village, Zoro's group has successfully dispelled the dark magic from quite a few giants. Snapping out of their trance, the giants deeply apologize to their 2 legendary captains for allowing themselves to be so easily manipulated by the enemy's dark magic. Dory and Brogy warmly reassure them that there's no shame in it, as they themselves had succumbed to the exact same curse earlier. Unfortunately, there are still plenty of other giants trapped in their violent demonic state. Just as Zoro is preparing to step in and pacify them, Chopper suddenly leaps into the scene out of nowhere. With a single, colossal swing of his monster point arm, our brilliant Straw Hat Doctor instantly purges the dark demonic spirits right out of the giants, restoring them to normal. The cute little doctor realizes that he possesses the unique medical capability to completely cure this demonic possession, meaning he can handle saving the remaining corrupted giants so Zoro doesn't have to cut them down. Zoro smiles and remarks that Chopper's success is simply proof of what an incredibly talented doctor he really is. Hearing this high praise from his cool crewmate, Chopper goes into his classic squiggly happy dance, feeling absolutely overjoyed and ecstatic. Meanwhile, just outside the borders of the western village, deep within the massive crater left by Prince Loki's dragon footprint, the severed body parts of Summer are slowly starting to crawl and reconnect with one another. At this point, Luffy is completely running on empty, totally exhausted from the battle. He begs Loki to go fetch him some meat, but the arrogant prince flatly shuts him down with a blunt refusal. Having no other choice, our hungry captain has to turn his hopeful eyes toward the helpful little squirrel. But while Luffy and Loki are bickering, that ominous black shadowy entity of Emu has mysteriously vanished from inside the frozen ice block. Shifting our focus all the way back to the Holy Land of Marijiwa, several grand buildings are currently engulfed in flames and crumbling to pieces. Deep inside the Serene Room of Flowers, Emu contacts the 5 elders to deliver a shocking announcement. He is temporarily leaving the sacred Holy Land. Following Imu's sudden declaration, the remaining elders gathered in the authority room are thrown into absolute panic, realizing their supreme lord intends to personally descend upon Elbaf. They desperately try to advise against this, arguing that putting himself on the front lines would only compromise his divine prestige. But right on cue, Saint Figurland Garling strides into the room and immediately begins scolding his fellow elders. Garling points out that they are being far too relaxed just sitting around like this. The Holy Land has just survived a massive crisis. While the return of shamrocks helped keep things from totally collapsing, the devastating famine is still actively ravaging the population. Because of this, Garling demands that the remaining elders actually step up and show some real leadership instead of sitting on their hands. What the world government desperately needs right now is absolute military dominance to keep the world under heel. Suddenly, York pings Garling with an urgent transmission, whining and demanding to be fed immediately because she is absolutely starving to death. This greedy clone of Vegapunk has been locked away in the Holy Land, forced to work round the clock at the Mary Joas power facility to run the Mother Flame engine. York begins bawling her eyes out and throwing a massive temper tantrum, complaining that her current prisoner lifestyle is a far cry from the luxurious dream she envisioned of eating fine food and wearing fancy silks like a true celestial dragon. She accuses the 5 elders of completely breaking their end of the deal. Garling coldly shoots back, informing her that the Holy Land is currently facing a catastrophic food crisis of unprecedented proportions. If she ever hopes to see this crisis resolved and finally live her dream life as a celestial dragon, she needs to shut up and generate more thermal energy from the Mother Flame. After all, since York is a direct clone of Vegapunk, she naturally shares a portion of the blame for the massive mistakes committed by the main scientist. Taking his seat, Garling sits down to continue his strategy meeting with the other elders. He sighs, noting that a relentless wave of unfortunate events has been crashing down upon them lately, pointing out that every single bit of this trouble began the exact moment Nika made his grand return to the world stage. Is this series of chaotic events just a random string of coincidences, or is it the inescapable destiny of the world unfolding? Even with these looming threats, Saint Jupiter firmly insists that their supreme lord, Imu, should absolutely not leave the safety of the Holy Land. If direct military action is truly required, they can simply dispatch the admirals from Marine headquarters straight to Elbaf. However, Saint Ethan Baron V. Nusjuro quickly dismisses this idea as completely unrealistic, pointing out that the admirals are already stretched incredibly thin handling a mountain of urgent global tasks. Hearing this, St. Marcus Mars stands up, making the bold decision to personally descend to the lower realm with his destination set directly for Elbaf. Having listened to the debate among the elders, the voice of Imu suddenly echoes through the chamber. He issues a stern, absolute command to the 5 elders, ordering them to cast aside all of their personal desires, their sluggish laziness, and their foolish pride this instant. Was the absolute disaster back at Egghead not humiliating enough for you, and yet you still think you're ready to march forward? Make no mistake, none of this is a coincidence. The current tide of history is completely unstoppable, and its wheels were set in motion an incredibly long time ago. Even though he has remained hidden deep within the Holy Land all this time, Imu has kept his eyes glued to every shift in the world history. Rox D. Zabek was a descendant of the ancient clan, who once vied to be king of the world, and the precise moment Rox managed to infiltrate the sacred room of flowers left even Imu thoroughly shocked. Then, 24 years ago, right before facing his execution, Roger sparked the legendary Great Pirate Age, sending waves of people flooding out onto the grand seas with the burning desire to hunt down the mythical One Piece treasure and uncover the forbidden truth of world history. 16 years ago, the mermaid Princess Shirahoshi was born into the world, holding the terrifying mantle of the ancient weapon Poseidon. 12 years ago, after literally centuries of relentless hunting to prevent the resurrection of Joy Boy, Imu was on the verge of finally securing the Nika fruit, only for Shanks to pull off a daring heist and accidentally let Luffy eat it. Then, 14 years ago, Imu came incredibly close to conquering the giant kingdom of Elbaf after successfully manipulating King Harold. Yet, at that crucial turning point, the legendary Hammer and Nighthawk chose Loki as their rightful master, empowering the young prince to successfully thwart Imu's dark designs. Fast forward to 2 years ago, right after the epic Paramount War, Imu's attention was drawn to Monkey D. Luffy, who was fiercely protected by Whitebeard's crew, wielding the legendary powers of the Nika fruit, alongside Marshall D. Teach, the spiritual heir of Xebec. These two figures are the modern descendants of Joy Boy and Rox, the very names that have struck a chord of caution and fear in Imu's heart for centuries. Yet, among all these massive global concerns, Imu harbors a very distinct, complex emotion toward Nefertari Vivi, whose appearance is the spitting image of Queen Nefertari Lily. At this very moment, a massive magic circle bearing a 5-pointed star begins to glow and manifest around Imu. Leaving the defense of the Holy Land in the hands of the 5 elders, Imu decides to teleport directly to Elbaf to join the fray. The 5 elders frantically plead with him to reconsider, but in their hearts they know all too well that absolutely no one can stand in the way of their supreme ruler's will. In an instant, Imu vanishes entirely from the Room of Flowers. Meanwhile, heading back to the Land of Giants over in the western village located within the upper world, Girth has successfully tracked down the severed remains of Sommer, tying him up securely and dragging him back for her captain to inspect. Hadruddin is completely blown away to see that this creepy enemy is somehow still kicking. Even though his body is chopped into multiple pieces, Girth casually pulls his segments apart with a completely blank face to prove the bizarre, abnormal biology of these holy knights. Sommer is absolutely seething with humiliation, furious at being treated like a harmless toy by the giant doctor. He snarls that he will never forget this embarrassment and swears to slaughter Girth in the most gruesome ways imaginable. While this is going on, Goldberg has managed to retrieve Sommer's beating heart from the battlefield. Examining it closely, Zoro points out that this weird Holy Knight's heart is actually crafted out of pure metal. He deduces that if they decide to smash this metal core, the guy will likely be dead for good with no hope of regenerating. This random guess by the Straw Hat Swordsman turns out to be absolutely spot on. Having his ultimate weakness exposed in front of everyone, Sommer goes into a complete panic, pulling the most hilarious, terrified face you've ever seen. Meanwhile, Frankie has carefully carried the severely injured Usopp and Brook over to the vicinity of the Seahorse Academy. The cyborg quickly notices that the bones of both crewmates are completely shattered, so he eagerly offers to remodel them into awesome cyborgs just like him. Hearing this terrifying proposal, Usopp and Brook immediately freak out, shivering in pure dread. Needless to say, they are absolutely refusing that upgrade. Meanwhile, Jinbei is also desperately shouting into the transponder snail to contact Dr. Chopper so he can rush over and give them proper medical care. Elsewhere, the 3 chopped up pieces of Gillingham's body have been casually strung up on a tree branch by Sanji. The knight is absolutely furious, screaming at the top of his lungs and swearing he will never forget the Straw Hat Cook's name. But Sanji couldn't care less about his threats, casually admitting that he hasn't even bothered to remember the guy's name in the first place. This complete lack of respect drives the Holy Knight absolutely insane with rage. Meanwhile, Gunko remains completely knocked out, locked up tight within the massive block of ice Loki summoned. At this point, Loki and Luffy have made their way to the Academy kitchen to scavenge for some much-needed food. The Giant Prince is highly confused as to why the entire place is completely frozen solid, prompting Lilith to explain that she had to completely drain all of its thermal energy using her multi-converter. Undeterred, Luffy, Loki, and their little squirrel friend make their way straight inside to feast and stuff their faces to recover their drained energy. Unfortunately, because the food itself has also been frozen solid, the taste is absolutely terrible. Even though Luffy is completely running on empty, he still insists on packing some food to bring over to the injured Usopp and Brook. Loki scoffs and tells him that he needs to focus on patching himself up first, pointing out that Luffy's shriveled up state looks absolutely pathetic right now. Taking the prince's advice, Luffy begins ravenously devouring a massive piece of meat, while curiously asking about the female knight Loki had frozen solid earlier. He wonders if she is actually still alive in there. Loki reassures him, explaining that Gunko is merely in a state of temporary suspended animation, so she definitely isn't dead yet. However, the catch is that only his special squirrel companion has the unique ability to melt that magical ice. Therefore, Luffy doesn't need to stress, as this Holy Knight absolutely never be able to break free on her own. Meanwhile, out on the battlefield, as Nami is guiding Zeus around, she suddenly senses a highly unsettling shift in the atmosphere. Suddenly, a massive pillar of pitch-black smoke shoots down from the heavens, slamming directly into the soil of Elbaf. Its sudden arrival leaves the giants utterly shocked and terrified. But the horror doesn't stop there. In rapid succession, 4 more ominous black smoke pillars crash down, completely surrounding the Aus Castle. From within these dark columns, an absolutely massive, terrifying magic circle begins to glow on the ground, carrying an energy completely different from the arrival of the 5 elders or the Holy Knights. Sensing the extreme danger, Nami quickly calls out to the crew, prompting Sanji and Frankie to rush to her side in an instant. Simultaneously, a series of deeply unsettling, creepy noises begin to echo throughout the land, leaving the giant citizens completely bewildered and terrified. Then, the surrounding trees and houses begin to warp, transforming into bizarre living entities that start dancing and laughing with incredibly twisted, malicious faces. The citizens of Elbaf are thrown into complete panic, desperately wondering if this is the terrifying power of yet another Holy Knight. Finally, a 6th monumental pillar of black smoke strikes directly down upon the ruins of Aus Castle, unleashing an incredibly sinister, suffocating wave of Conqueror's Haki. This monstrous pressure is so overwhelming that several children instantly foam at the mouth and collapse unconscious. Even the seasoned giants who manage to stay on their feet are left drenched in cold sweat, staring in absolute paralyzed shock. Right off the bat, Loki instantly senses this overwhelming surge of Haki and knows exactly who it belongs to, the very adversary he just went toe-to-toe with. Deep inside the throne room of the towering Elbaf Castle, the ultimate supreme being Imu has officially made their grand descent onto the mortal realm. But wait, just as the mystical teleportation ritual wraps up, Imu suddenly drops straight down to their knees, hitting the floor hard and spitting up a shocking amount of blood. He is shaking uncontrollably, visibly writhing in agonizing pain, before suddenly unleashing another massive burst of Haki that completely obliterates a section of the castle. Feeling their master's terrifying presence, Killing Him and Summer instantly panic, paralyzed by pure, unadulterated dread. They simply cannot bring themselves to believe the mind-blowing reality that their supreme master has actually graced Elbaf with his physical presence. Throwing off his heavy hood, Imu leaps gracefully to the absolute peak of the castle, finally stepping into the spotlight after staying in the shadows for so long. Yes, this is none other than Saint Nerona Imu, one of the original 20 founding monarchs who established the world government and currently reigns supreme as the Shadow King of the entire world, possessing a devastating devil fruit ability. True to his reputation as the ultimate final boss, Imu's character design is absolutely spectacular, unique, and incredibly cool. He is revealed to be a remarkably handsome man sporting a pair of striking S-shaped curved horns, mesmerizing multi-ringed eyes, flowing white hair, and a deep brown complexion. Covered in highly bizarre mystical tattoos across his body, Imu also boasts a long, ominous arrow-tipped tail that looks exactly like something belonging to Satan himself. Hovering all around him are ominous bands of dark, swirling clouds, with the clouds draped behind his back eerily sprouting countless blinking eyes that look utterly terrifying. For combat, Imu wields a massive spear-like weapon featuring a viciously serrated curved blade at the tip. Could the grand arrival of this terrifying being be a dark omen signaling that doomsday is officially upon the world? Perched high upon the grand castle's peak, Imu sits in deep, silent contemplation for what feels like an eternity, keeping a watchful, calculating eye over the entire battlefield. Suddenly, with absolute terrifying swiftness, he descends upon the western village, catching the local giant residents completely off guard with his unbelievable velocity. Now, even though Imu doesn't quite match the towering heights of the giants, his massive physical presence is easily on par with the monstrous Emperor Kaido himself. Without wasting any time, Imu demands to know from the surrounding giants, demanding to know the exact whereabouts of Elbaf's sovereign king. Brogy and Dory are completely taken aback by this sudden intrusion, demanding to know the true identity of the mysterious figure standing before them, while proudly declaring that Elbaf currently has no ruling king. Surveying the area, Imu spots Summer looking utterly pathetic and helpless, clutched in Get's firm grasp. Promptly, he leaps high into the air, drawing his blade to unleash a devastating strike. He acts swiftly to liberate the captured Holy Knight, fiercely scolding his subordinates for their pathetic and incredibly incompetent performance. Imu's attack speed is so ridiculously fast that not a single soul can even perceive his movements. In the blink of an eye, Gerd's thumbs and index fingers are severed cleanly, causing Somer's body to tumble straight down to the hard ground below. That lightning-fast slash was so incredibly clean and precise that Gerd didn't even have a single second to process the agonizing pain. Witnessing this horrific sight, Hadrudin and Zoro are left in utter disbelief, while the other giants instantly panic, fearing for their beloved doctor's life. Zoro's face turns completely pale, deeply shaken by the terrifying display of overwhelming power from the foe. Confronted by the enemy's terrifying strength, Zoro mistakenly assumes that this foe is merely another one of the Holy Knights, prompting him to step forward and intercept the threat. Meanwhile, Somer has managed to pull his shattered body back together, anxiously clutching his own heart in deep distress. It is now blindingly obvious to everyone present that Imu is indeed their ultimate enemy. With the battle lines clearly drawn, a furious Hadrudin unleashes a massive, powerful punch straight at Imu to avenge his fallen comrade. Observing this dangerous move, Stanson desperately shouts at his captain to stop immediately, realizing that the overwhelming power of the adversary before them is on a completely different level compared to any Holy Knight they faced before. Showing absolutely zero mercy, Imu decisively swings his blade to cut down Hadrudin. Acting on pure instinct, Stanson delivers a swift kick to shove his captain out of harm's way, but as a direct consequence, his own leg is completely severed by the lethal blow. This horrifying and bloody sight leaves everyone present frozen in absolute terror. Hadrudin is overcome with immense guilt for bringing such a tragic fate upon his loyal crewmate. Brogy loudly demands once again to know who this monster is, but his questions are met with nothing but cold, eerie silence. Unable to just sit back and watch anymore, Zoro charges forward, unleashing his fierce spirit with a powerful attack. He unleashes a devastating three-sword style technique, the formidable King of Hell, Purgatory Onigiri. Yet, Imu remains completely unfazed, effortlessly blocking the moss-headed swordsman's powerful slash using nothing but his monstrous demonic tail. Immediately after, Imu weaves hand signs and conjures a sinister, small black flame within his palm known as demonic energy. Zoro instantly senses the extreme danger of this incoming strike, but before he can react, Imu's fiery sphere slams directly into his face, causing Zoro to cough up blood and crash backward in agonizing pain. Witnessing his friend get blasted, Chopper is consumed by immense worry for his crewmate. Enraged by the sheer brutality Imu has inflicted upon his crew, Hadrudin leaps forward once again, swinging his massive giant axe with the clear intent to slice his opponent clean in half. Maintaining his terrifyingly calm demeanor, Imu once again weaves hand signs and fires his dark black flames directly at the captain of the new giant warrior pirates. Unlike the previous attack, this dark fire triggers a colossal, highly destructive explosion, engulfing everything in its path. Caught right in the epicenter, Hadrudin spits out blood and collapses heavily onto the battlefield. But Imu is far from finished. He harnesses his demonic energy to forge a dark, fiery ring, transferring its dark power directly into Somer, who was previously shivering from receiving multiple critical wounds. Empowered by this supreme godlike energy, the Holy Knight's stamina is instantly restored, leaving him completely revitalized and bursting with power. Imu commands Somer to swiftly complete his objective, stating he has absolutely no time to waste, before both of them launch themselves into the sky, splitting up in separate directions. Following Imu's departure, the surrounding structures and foliage that had been corrupted by the dark energy immediately return to their natural state. Chopper quickly springs into action, shouting at the giants to carry all the wounded indoors so he can treat them, while ensuring the unconscious children are moved to safety. Following that, the residents of the western village quickly alert the other Elbaf warriors about Imu's arrival, warning them that this monster possessed power far beyond the three Holy Knights and must be approached with extreme caution. Right now, a pair of black wings, identical to those of King the Conflagration, sprout from Imu's back. He flies off at an incredibly breakneck pace toward an unknown destination. The citizens of Elbaf are left in a state of utter panic and confusion as this nightmare shows no signs of ending. They are completely exhausted from the endless fires and destruction, yet they have no choice but to brace themselves and pick up their weapons to fight. After traveling a short distance, Imu arrives at Gunko's location. He morphs the shaft of his spear into a powerful cannon, unleashing a blast of dark flame directly at the block of ice, causing an earth-shattering explosion before the supreme ruler of the world takes off into the sky once more. Meanwhile, Scopper Gaban immediately senses Imu's terrifying presence. He recalls that he has never felt such a sinister and overwhelming Haki in his entire life, noting that even the evil Haki back during the infamous God Valley incident didn't compare to this. Back at the school, flames suddenly flare up once again. It turns out Loki deliberately conjured the fire to quickly thaw out their food supply. The prince urges everyone to eat up and refuel as fast as possible, sensing that a truly extraordinary and dangerous entity has just stepped foot onto Elbaf. Luffy, also sensing this bizarre presence, is actively stuffing his face alongside Loki and the squirrel. However, the rubber boy's recovery speed is noticeably slower than the prince's. Having successfully put out the raging fires, Nami reunites with her crewmates, highly confused and demanding to know what on earth is going on. Jinbei is equally in the dark about the situation, but Jinbei notes that the Conqueror's Haki that erupted earlier was absolutely terrifying. If this enemy turns out to be an ally of the Holy Knights, they are in serious trouble. He wonders if the foe's goal is to liberate their captured allies. Meanwhile, the arrival of the Supreme Leader leaves Killingham absolutely ecstatic and thrilled. Shortly after, he is bestowed with the same dark demonic power that Sama received from Imu. Sanji scowls deeply, demanding to know who exactly is standing in front of him. Jinbei strongly advises the cook to keep his distance, warning him that this opponent is extremely lethal. However, the Straw Hat cook makes a rather reckless decision. He decides to directly confront the absolute ruler of the entire world head-on. Just like his effortless encounter with Zoro, Imu easily blocks the cook's signature, high-powered kick, and even decides to show Sanji what a truly devastating kick technique actually looks like. Imu's counter kick is completely enveloped in dark black flames, unleashing a massive explosion that the Straw Hat chef simply has no chance of avoiding. Witnessing Imu's terrifying, destructive might, the Straw Hat crew members are left in complete shock. Unwilling to let the enemy run rampant, Loki arrives on the scene. Loki demands to know exactly what Imu thinks he is doing in Elbaf. Imu coldly responds that he is searching for the one who murdered his subordinate, Harold, 14 years ago. Loki steps forward majestically, resting his mighty hammer Mjolnir on his shoulder, and boldly declares his answer. He proudly states, "He was never your subordinate or servant. That man, Harold, was my father, and he was the true, rightful king of Elbaf." Loki stares directly into Imu's eyes, his face contorted in absolute fury as dark clouds and fierce lightning begin to gather around them. Loki confidently proclaims that he is the exact person Imu has been looking for all this time. The prince declares he isn't going anywhere and will follow no one because Elbaf is his home. "Mark my words, you absolute fool," Loki yells. Hearing this, Imu finally understands the situation. He realizes that if Loki didn't exist, none of these complicated problems would have ever happened. Loki begins to recall his late father's final words on his deathbed. King Harold believed himself to be the worst ruler in Elbaf's history, which is why he urged his son to strike him down and claim the throne. He wanted his son to take his life and seize the royal crown. King Harold passed away at the age of 144. Considering that giants can live up to 300 years, he had so much of his life ahead of him. It was none other than Imu who manipulated Loki's father, indirectly causing the death of Elbaf's great king. Imu casually admits that losing a perfect compliant pawn like Harold was a bit of an inconvenience for his grand plans. Hearing this disrespect, an enraged Loki swings his mighty hammer, coating it in advanced Conqueror's Haki while channeling the raging thunder from the dark sky above to crush the villain. Remembering the kindness and greatness of his father, Loki's rage intensifies. Yet, with that same chilling, indifferent expression, Imu doesn't even flinch, standing perfectly still, fully prepared to receive the cursed prince's devastating hammer strike. Instantly, a colossal lightning bolt crashes down as Loki screams in pure fury at Imu, demanding to know what he did to his father. The mighty hammer Mjolnir, now fully charged with crackling energy, swings downward with insane force directly at Imu's head. However, Imu swiftly harnesses his demonic energy, Conjuring a massive, pitch-black flame with his left hand, he effortlessly blocks the high-impact strike, completely absorbing the colossal damage unleashed by Loki's legendary hammer. The violent clash between these two monsters triggers a catastrophic explosion, sending waves of advanced conquerors' hockey lightning crackling through the environment. Having been caught in Imu's previous blast, Sanji is knocked completely unconscious as the massive shockwave blows him away. Fortunately, Bonnie reacts in time to catch him before he flies off. Loki is absolutely stunned that his opponent was able to block and endure his earth-shattering hammer strike. The prince is highly curious about the bizarre black flame Imu summoned, demanding to know what kind of power it is. Imu continues to utilize his demonic energy, physically expanding his body until he reaches the size of a giant. Now, the absolute ruler of the world and the cursed Prince of Elbaf stand eye to eye, with virtually no difference in their physical stature. Imu declares that this is his true martial prowess. He then transforms the head of his spear into a heavy iron mace, using it to clash directly with Loki's legendary hammer. Moving like a flash of lightning, Imu leaps high into the air, causing Loki's counterattack to miss completely. Immediately after, Imu transforms his weapon into a long black sword named Nemesis, also known as the Divine Retribution Blade, leaving Loki completely speechless. Before the cursed prince can react, the divine blade pierces straight through his body. This brutal, devastating strike causes Loki to cough up blood as he collapses to the ground in sheer agony. Imu coldly explains that humanity's insatiable thirst for power always leads to absolute corruption, prompting mortals to forge dark pacts to achieve their desires. And when these three elements align, absolute dominion is born, Imu proclaims, sprouting his black wings once again to float high in the air. He morphs his sword into a massive chained mace, swinging it in wide, menacing circles as he prepares his next devastating move. Loki struggles to his feet after that near-fatal blow, swinging his hammer to clash with Imu once more. However, Imu's execution is incredibly fast and precise, leaving Loki unable to react as he takes the full force of a massive explosion triggered by Imu's chained mace. Imu offers to grant Loki godlike power that would allow him to transcend his own mortal limits. Ignoring the offer, Loki springs back into action, swinging his hammer with immense force. The impact of his strike sends violent shockwaves throughout the surrounding area. Believing he has finally crushed Imu, Loki slumps to the ground, panting heavily. The prince remarks that Imu's power doesn't feel divine at all, but rather like a sinister contract made with a devil. Suddenly, Imu appears right behind Loki without a single scratch on him. Imu calmly states that there is absolutely no difference between a god and a demon. Ignoring Imu's words, Loki fiercely declares he will never bow to anyone, not even a deity. Imu retorts that true peace and happiness can only exist under absolute subjugation. Imu then begins to reminisce about Joy Boy, implying they might have once been close companions who shared light-hearted laughs. Seizing the moment while Imu is distracted by his memories, Loki summons a massive thunderbolt and swings his hammer again. Suddenly, Imu lets out a furious scream. "Isn't that right, Joy Boy?" Imu roars in intense anger, unleashing a massive burst of Conqueror's haki that sweeps across the entire region. Back inside the school, Luffy immediately senses this overwhelming presence, breaking into a cold sweat as he experiences this terrifying pressure for the first time. Imu's Conqueror's haki makes the rubber boy feel incredibly heavy and suffocated. Luffy realizes he stands no chance of winning unless he stuffs his stomach with food. Meanwhile, taking advantage of the distraction, Loki successfully lands a clean blow on Imu, electrocuting him with lightning. Following that, the cursed prince uses immense strength to blast his opponent straight into the treasure tree atom. However, this heavy attack only manages to cause a minor head injury to Imu, who remains completely unfazed and indifferent. Knowing that won't be enough, Loki powers up by transforming into his giant black dragon form once again. Seeing the dragon preparing to fire a massive energy blast, Imu's expression hardens as he quickly weaves hand signs, unleashing a powerful lightning sphere attack. The destructive attack shakes the very foundation of Elbaf. However, thanks to Imu's quick barrier made of demonic energy, he only suffers minor scratches. He flashes a mysterious smile and says, "So, you have finally returned after all this time." Even after that devastating blast, Loki can still clearly feel Imu's menacing presence. Realizing that maintaining such a massive size might limit his movements, Loki decides to shrink his body back down. Meanwhile, Imu remains in deep thought. wearing a devious grin. He never imagined he would encounter the traitor once again in this lifetime. Seeing snow falling in the mortal realm, Imu is genuinely surprised, contemplating the strange weather phenomenon. It appears that the friction between ice and air is creating this beautiful snow. The synergy between the user and the hammer has always been spectacular, suggesting the hammer has finally found a worthy master. This brings back deep waves of nostalgia for Imu. The hammer has actually consumed a mythical zoan fruit. The mythical zoan fruit allows the hammer to transform into a legendary ice squirrel. The weapon feels immense anger upon seeing its ancient enemy. The squirrel quickly creates a protective layer of ice, signaling Loki to fire an energy blast directly through it. Trusting his faithful weapon completely, Loki opens his mouth wide and channels a devastating bolt of lightning into the ice barrier. Their combined power unleashes a rapid succession of attacks toward the enemy. In response, Imu expands the fiery ring behind him to manifest giant fireballs. Within moments, the dark fireballs collide violently with Loki's lightning strikes, triggering massive explosions that illuminate the entire battlefield with blinding light. One of the blasts manages to singe the wings of the giant black dragon, but the fierce clash show absolutely no signs of stopping. Watching this terrifying spectacle from a distance, Bonnie is filled with deep anxiety, while Lilith urges her to retreat immediately. Lilith is fully determined to keep Bonnie safe from any danger. Knowing this, Bonnie only approaches to gather information on the battlefield rather than participate in the fight, fully aware that the enemy is a monster of unmatched proportions. Lilith is highly intrigued by the mysterious individual causing absolute chaos in Elbaf, noting that his authority clearly transcends that of the Holy Knights, yet he does not appear to be one of the five elders. The world government is a colossal entity that has held absolute dominion for over 8 centuries, with a dark history far deeper than Vegapunk ever imagined. Despite sustaining severe injuries, Sanji struggles to stand back up to fight. His stubborn determination makes Bonnie incredibly anxious, and she begs him to stop. Earlier, seeing Sanji lying motionless after being caught in Imu's blast, Killingham stepped forward to mock the chef, surprised he survived. The Holy Knight declares he will continue with his main mission, noting that Sanji must have realized his power has reached an entirely new level. He then uses Sanji's body as a stepping stone to launch himself into the air. Realizing that Killingham still intends to kidnap the children, Sanji is consumed by intense rage and quickly gives chase, determined to protect Elbaf and ensure everyone's hard work doesn't go to waste. He swears to guard this legendary land because Elbaf holds a special place in the hearts of Luffy and Usopp. Furthermore, it is a magnificent land home to beautiful giant women, giving him the ultimate motivation to fight. Deep within the library, a hidden trapdoor leads to a secret underground chamber. Amazingly, all the precious books have been safely transported here, avoiding the devastating flames and saving centuries of knowledge. Robin and Saul are absolutely overjoyed, expressing their deepest gratitude to the heroic owl. They had feared that everything was lost to the fire, and this miracle only deepens Saul's curiosity about the mysterious bird. Meanwhile, Summer locates the giant's ship and uses his monstrous strength to launch it back into the Cloud Sea, contacting Killingham to bring the children to the vessel immediately to secure their retreat. At the Western Village Tavern, Chopper carefully bandages Gerd's wounds, noting that Imu's cuts were incredibly precise but will heal with time, though complete recovery will take a few months. Gerd is deeply grateful to the doctor. She feels embarrassed that she ended up as the patient rather than the healer, but Chopper reassures her not to be hard on herself because the opponent was simply on an entirely different level of power. Hajruddin and the other injured parents receive medical treatment from Chopper as well, earning him the heartfelt gratitude of the children. Chopper promises to provide more thorough care once the chaotic battle is fully over. Road weeps uncontrollably upon learning about Gerd's severed fingers, wishing it were all a nightmare and offering his own fingers in her stead. While Gerd declines, she begins to view him in a warmer light after his brave actions. Having seen him risk his life to protect his younger brother, she realizes he has matured significantly. Overjoyed by her praise, Road's excitement triggers a massive nosebleed, causing his younger brother to sigh in sheer disappointment. Near the Western Harbor, Zoro has recovered enough to ask Goldberg for a lift back to the battlefield, knowing his own pace would be too slow. Goldberg gladly agrees, assuring Zoro that he is happy to help as the only uninjured fighter. Goldberg expresses deep gratitude to the Straw Hats for standing alongside the Giants during Elbaf's crisis, but Zoro waves it off, stating that Luffy's philosophy is simple. Their friends' troubles are always their own troubles. Goldberg laughs, finally understanding why Hajrudin holds Luffy in such incredibly high regard. Meanwhile, Zoro ponders how Imu's dark flames can manifest as explosive projectiles, unlike any power they have encountered before. Recognizing the threat is far greater than the Holy Knights, Zoro insists they must neutralize this foe quickly. Elsewhere, Killingham anxiously informs Sommer that he has summoned a terrifying monster due to his newly buffed powers. Sommer scolds Killingham for his foolishness, admitting that even he fears the creature and doubts Killingham can control it. But since it is already unleashed, they must proceed with their mission without looking back. Sommer urges Killingham to move quickly as time is running out, asking what became of Gunko. Killingham recalls seeing Gunko on his way but is unsure if she survived, which surprises Sommer given her renowned resilience. Sommer notes that Imu cannot remain outside the Holy Land for long, meaning a massive threat exists in Elbaf that must be erased immediately, placing a heavy burden on them to meet the Supreme Leader's high expectations. Suddenly, a torrential downpour floods the western village, causing widespread panic among the residents as they scramble to evacuate the wounded before the houses are completely submerged by the rising waters. The mastermind behind this chaotic deluge is none other than the Holy Knight Killingham, who commands his most powerful summon to capture the children, sending a giant water hand reaching out to grab the young ones. Killingham explains that for the celestial dragons, born far above the clouds, the idea of water falling from the heavens is a terrifying concept, and they were raised on legends of a terrifying rain deity in the lower world. In addition to tales about the D-Clan, young celestial dragons are told of a bizarre, monstrous rain god called Giga, who pours water upon mortals during ancient rain summoning rituals, spreading absolute chaos. This summon's relentless attack throws the western village into complete turmoil. Garling is absolutely thrilled to have secured the children once again, while Sommer stands ready to set sail and leave Elbaf behind. Zoro immediately senses the commotion and danger unfolding in the western village. However, the swordsman trusts that the allies there can handle the situation, choosing to push forward alongside Goldberg. Meanwhile, Sanji is rushing toward the scene at absolute maximum speed. Zoro yells out at the top of his lungs, urging the cook to keep his head clear and prepare for the ultimate fight of their lives. He urged them to push past their absolute limits with every single ounce of strength they had left in them. Hearing this, Sanji instantly fired back with sheer irritation, shouting, "Hey, why don't you just worry about your own miserable self instead, you complete and utter moron?" The ongoing, high-stakes battle between Imu and Loki is still raging on. Imu seems convinced that Ragnar is simply biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment or the right opponent to take him down. Loki appears a bit taken aback, noticing how determined his pet is to get revenge. After all, Imu presents the most formidable challenge that the prince has ever faced. Imu is absolutely certain that neither Loki nor Luffy will ever submit to his will. Because of this unwavering belief, he's resolved to eliminate both of them immediately, no matter the personal cost or consequence. With that declaration, Imu channels even more demonic energy into his weapon, preparing to counter the upcoming onslaught. He's ready to face Loki's next devastating attack. With a swift motion, Imu spins his spear, effortlessly deflecting the bolts of lightning that are striking down from the heavens. Shifting our focus back to the western village, we witness the rain god Jira abducting the children. Even though the parents are severely injured, they bravely push themselves to stand determined to fight and reclaim their beloved children. Chopper desperately tries to persuade them to stay still, emphasizing that the blood transfusion process isn't complete yet. However, these parents are completely disregarding their own safety and well-being. They absolutely refuse to let their children fall into enemy hands even one more time. Despite their fierce determination, it seems that their attacks are having absolutely no effect whatsoever on the rain god Jira. Furthermore, her offensive power is simply immense. A casual flick of her wrist is enough to take down an entire group of giants. Even though she's only captured 7 children so far, for the immensely greedy Killingham, that's more than enough. He immediately orders the rain god to bring them away to complete his plan. Around this time, Sanji is nearing the location, and his face darkens considerably upon seeing the creature before him. Despite Imu's powerful fire attack, the ice mask created by Ragnar remains completely unscathed. Inside this icy prison, Gunko is still unconscious. On the other hand, Brook and Usopp have already regained consciousness. Usopp is quite puzzled, wondering why Brook went out of his way to provoke Gunko. Feeling that something isn't quite right, he rushed over to try and assist him. Nami speculates that Brook must have some prior acquaintance with Gunko. Perhaps she was an old enemy of his? Brook clarifies that the Holy Knight isn't precisely an enemy, but he definitely has no desire to encounter her again. The musician of the Straw Hat Pirates finds this rather confusing because, if that's the case, if she were still alive, she should be around 77 years old by now. It's simply impossible for her to be as young and vibrant as this Holy Knight appears. Nami suggests it might just be a case of mistaken identity, especially since Gunko is clearly a celestial dragon. Brook continues his explanation, recalling his days in the Asperia Kingdom, where he once served as the captain of the kingdom's battle convoy and formed a close bond with Princess Shuri. He explains that he eventually lost all contact with Shuri after she was taken to the Holy Land. Although Brook isn't certain whether Princess Shuri is still alive, he takes some comfort in knowing that she survived long enough to reach the Holy Land. After hearing Brook's account, Usopp concludes that Gunko is a celestial dragon and notices her uncanny resemblance to the Princess Brook once knew. Despite this connection, however, it doesn't change the fact that she attacked EP. Brook still harbors some doubts because for a brief moment, Gunko seemed to neutralize his abilities, along with those of the entire group. She clearly knows about Brook and even attempted to persuade him to abandon his pursuit, his plans. Unfortunately, that moment of clarity didn't last long at all. Almost immediately afterward, Gunko seemed to transform into an entirely different person. Ever since she first appeared, the Straw Hat Pirates have observed at least 3 distinct personalities within her. First, there was the wicked Holy Knight, then a kind-hearted woman, and finally, this demonic form with wings sprouting from her back. This leads to the strong possibility that Gunko might just be a puppet, manipulated by someone else entirely. Recalling the moment Gunko transformed into that monstrous devil, Brook still feels a profound sense of horror. Even Jinbei is aware that his comrade is in a very difficult situation. However, right now, Brook needs to make a swift decision. Should he spare her life, or should he end her existence? If he hesitates and allows her to fully awaken, the entire group will undoubtedly be in grave danger. Brook begins to tremble slightly as he starts recounting the past to his fellow crewmates. It goes way back, to a time when Shuri was just a child, and he was in his vibrant 20s, full of life. They both resided in a kingdom that has since been forgotten and no longer exists. It was about 70 years ago in the western Blue Sea that Asperia was a land filled with melodies and music. Every single corner of the kingdom was bustling with instrument workshops. Brook's love for music back then was just as profound as it is now. He was consistently the earliest riser in the entire kingdom, using his voice to awaken everyone. Even though he was only 20 years old, Brook had already risen to the esteemed position of captain of the Royal Guard. With his cheerful and sociable personality, Brook was highly regarded by his subordinates. They frequently sought his expertise to train them in swordsmanship. However, Brook was solely focused on Princess Shuri. He would often teach her swordsmanship, sing songs for her, and tell her stories. Shuri mentioned that she had practiced diligently today and wished she could be as strong as her mother. Brook readily admitted that her mother was indeed very powerful. Moreover, her mother's beauty had completely captivated his heart. Shuri frowned, remarking that falling for a married woman wasn't exactly a commendable thing to do. Brook, however, didn't share that sentiment. In his view, love knows no bounds. King Leuven, who happened to be pruning a nearby tree, overheard this and immediately pronounced a death sentence upon Brook. Brook was startled and felt that such a punishment was incredibly harsh. He had no intention of usurping the throne. He would simply wait for the king to pass away naturally. Shuri, finding this amusing, advised Brook to give up his daydreams about her mother. Instead, she suggested that when she grew up, she would marry Brook. King Leuven was utterly astonished by his daughter's words. "Shuri," he exclaimed, "those sweet sentiments should really be directed towards your father." However, instead of pretending to agree, Brook outright rejected Shuri, stating that he didn't want to marry a snot-nosed child. Furthermore, Brook is a man who remains steadfastly loyal to just one woman. Angered by his daughter's rejection, King Leuven lunged at Brook with a kick. Fortunately, the future musician of the Straw Hat Pirates managed to dodge the attack. Suddenly, a guard rushes in, delivering an urgent report. A troop of cavalry belonging to some gang is currently advancing from the harbor towards the town. While some guards are already within the town, they are completely outnumbered by the approaching enemy forces. The enemy forces have overwhelming numbers. Reinforcements have departed from the castle, but it's highly unlikely they'll arrive in time. The attackers are continuously shouting the name of Queen Candle, who is currently attending a play inside the town. King Leuven panics, suspecting that these attackers are precisely members of the Moran family. Those despicable individuals have been targeting Queen Candle for a very long time. King Leuven immediately orders his soldiers to contact Candle and instruct the Queen to remain inside the theater without fail. However, the communication system within the theater has been set to silent mode, rendering the soldiers unable to reach the Queen. Shuri anxiously pleads with Brook to do something to save her mother. Brook scratches his head nonchalantly, remembering that he happened to encounter the Moran family at the harbor earlier that morning. Over at the opera house, a play has just concluded, and Empress Candle is showering it with praise. Members of the gang demand that Candle come out immediately. Their leader, Don Moran, has given them explicit orders to open fire if she refuses. Today is the day for a final, decisive reckoning. She will soon learn to love and respect their boss. As one of the guards attempts to intervene and prevent the Empress from leaving the theater, he is immediately shot down by a member of the gang. Seeing the king and Shuri looking quite worried, Brook quickly reassures them both. He states that the Empress is incredibly strong and won't be easily captured by the enemy. What's more, he adds with a touch of irony, they completely fail to realize something crucial. When Brook encountered the cavalry troop at the harbor earlier, he single-handedly took them all down with his blade. Simultaneously, at the theater, the gang members suddenly collapse, succumbing to unexpected slashes. They all lie sprawled on the ground, grimacing in pain. The surrounding citizens are utterly bewildered because it's evident these men were struck down some time ago. This is precisely the signature lightning slash technique of Captain Brook. At this very moment, Queen Candle emerges. All eyes in Esperia turn towards the Queen, unable to resist gazing at her breathtaking beauty. Over 70 years ago, 2 stars shone brightly in the kingdom of Esperia. One was the former captain of the combat escort, and the current queen of the kingdom, Queen Candle. The other, though his music wasn't widely loved by the populace, was a master of the lightning slash. He was so fast that his victims often didn't even realize they had been struck. Captain Brook, the captain of the ambush squad, hummed a tune. At this particular time, the kingdom was enjoying a period of absolute peace and complete prosperity. It was the year the kingdom's princess turned 14. Upon hearing of her enchanting beauty, princes from 5 neighboring nations arrived to seek her hand in marriage. However, Shuri showed no interest whatsoever in weak men or those who lacked any musical talent. By this time, Brook was already 27 years old, and he wasn't particularly surprised to learn that Shuri had easily fended off all the visiting princes. Just like when she was little, Shuri was always glued to Brook's side. Knowing his preference for strong women, she made a conscious effort to become stronger herself. As for her chest, she was confident it would develop in the future, so Brook didn't need to worry too much about it. Shuri persistently flirted with Brook, but he largely ignored her advances, even gently reminding her to behave appropriately. However, when he spotted attractive women on the street, the future musician of the Straw Hats would excitedly rush towards them, demanding to see their underwear. This was simply unacceptable behavior. Afterward, Brook would continue to play his instrument and sing melodies for the princess. Shuri absolutely adored Brook's songs and had, in fact, fallen deeply in love with the guard. It wasn't just Shuri. The king also held a great fondness for Brook's compositions. Brook, in turn, cherished Queen Candle and King Leuven dearly. They treated him with exceptional kindness and provided him with immense support. If it weren't for King Duin, Brook might very well be nothing more than a skeleton right now. At the tender age of 11, Brook had lost both his parents and had no one to rely on. Fueled by an intense passion for music, Brook would often stand outside the school peering inside with an expression of longing. Upon discovering Brook lingering nearby, school officials would promptly chase him away with sticks. To pursue his musical dreams, Brook ingeniously crafted a violin using a discarded bottle and some salvaged electrical wires found in the junkyard. Despite the hardships of his life, Brook maintained a cheerful outlook and found solace in singing. His captivating voice eventually drew the attention of Prince Leuven, leading him to the very junkyard. While the melodies were catchy, the lyrics of the songs Brook wrote were, to put it mildly, quite vulgar. Leuven was quite astonished that Brook could create music from mere discarded items. Brook noticed that the prince had been visiting this spot frequently, which led him to believe Leuven genuinely enjoyed his music. When Leuven mentioned that he was only 21 years old, Brook laughed and replied that he had the face of an old man, joking that he must have lived through a very hard life. From that point onward, Brook and Duin became close friends, with Brook referring to the Prince of Esperia as his elder brother. To commemorate their burgeoning friendship, Brook invited him to share a meal of frog stew along with some fried grasshoppers. For Brook, this dish was absolutely divine. He had previously pilfered curry powder from a Navy ship that occasionally docked nearby this location. And this very curry powder was the secret ingredient in the stew. Reflecting on his own comfortable life within the palace and then looking at the somewhat unappetizing looking stew that Brook frequently consumed, Duin couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for the young musician's circumstances. However, when he tasted the frog stew, Duin nearly met his maker. Yet Brook mistakenly believed that Duin was trembling with delight from the exquisite flavor. Afterward, Brook continued to sing for Duin. Noticing Duin reaching for his wallet, Brook vehemently refused the offer, assuming his brother wasn't exactly wealthy himself. In the subsequent days, they shared many memorable moments together. They rummaged through the junkyard, scavenged for food, and sang songs in unison. Then, one day, at the kingdom's harbor, Brook was apprehended and brutally tortured by the Navy, who falsely accused him of being part of a gunpowder smuggling ring. A search of his person yielded only a small bag of curry powder. Not wanting the public to criticize them for arresting the wrong person, these soldiers planned to eliminate Brook. Realizing he had no chance of survival, Brook began to sing and cry out in utter despair. Just at that critical moment, Leuven burst through the door, consumed by a furious rage. The Navy soldiers were utterly astonished to see the prince present at the scene. Overjoyed to find his brother alive, Duin embraced him tightly. The royal guard pleaded with the prince to step back and let them handle the chaotic situation. However, Duin insisted that he would personally deliver retribution to those who had wronged his brother. Later, the Navy received confirmation that the actual smuggler had been apprehended, thus exonerating Brook completely. The royal guard continued to implore the prince to set aside his personal feelings, reminding him that the Navy was a force backed by the government's authority. Duin, however, retorted that if the government intended to protect such individuals, then perhaps the world was already nearing its end. At this time, Candel was serving as the captain of the royal guard. Unlike the other guards, Candel consistently supported Leuven's decisions. Together, she and the prince joined forces to eliminate the corrupt Navy soldiers. Witnessing this display, Brook couldn't help but be taken by surprise. It was hard to believe that the brother he often conversed with possessed such remarkable abilities. Upon learning that Candel had once again saved the country and secured victory for the oppressed, the women of the kingdom admired her even more. Waking up in the palace, Brook realized that the preceding events hadn't been a dream. Leuven had no intention of deceiving Brook about his true identity. The time spent with Brook had been incredibly enjoyable. Furthermore, Duin instructed Brook not to reveal to anyone that he had stolen the curry powder. Kendu sighed, believing Brook needed to be more aware of and mindful of his social standing. Every time the prince disappeared from the palace, the guards would worry incessantly, losing sleep and appetite. However, upon learning that the prince was spending time with a young boy like Brook, Candel's anxiety would subside. Completely captivated by the captain of the royal guard, Brook became so excited that he actually started bleeding from his nose. Leuven declared that Brook was his favorite musician. Consequently, the prince issued an immediate order for his soldiers to prepare a room and provide all the necessary musical instruments befitting his talent. Brook needed to start attending school right away. A new star was truly destined to emerge in this kingdom. From this moment forward, the palace was guaranteed to become a place filled with joy, celebration, and overflowing music. Overwhelmed by his brother's actions, Brook was deeply touched and shed tears of pure happiness. Due to his pressing state affairs, Prince Duan entrusted Kendall with the task of training Brook. The young musician was required to learn etiquette, proper social interaction, and the art of conversation immediately. The scenery surrounding the royal palace was filled with breathtaking beauty, a stark contrast to the junkyard where Brook had lived, making the young boy incredibly enthusiastic. Furthermore, there were also many beautiful noble women present, which further motivated Brook. Nevertheless, in Brook's heart, Kendall remained the most beautiful woman of all. Kendall sighed, requesting Brook to behave himself with proper decorum. Before she could even finish her sentence, Brook immediately requested to see the girl's underwear, much to Kendall's exasperation. Despite his fondness for music and school, Brook absolutely refused to wear the student uniform. Brook argued that being confined within the school would hinder his ability to compose beautiful music. However, if he were allowed to wear the combat battalion uniform, Brook would be more than willing. Unlike the makeshift instrument he had in the junkyard, receiving a genuine, high-quality violin filled Brook with immense joy. He even slept clutching the precious instrument tightly. The guards often felt a twinge of jealousy towards Brook as he consistently received special attention from Captain Kendall. While practicing swordsmanship, Brook inquired about Kendall's ideal type of man. In reality, Kendall's heart was already set on someone, but he held a position of high status, making him unattainable for her. This is precisely why Kendall honed her swordsmanship skills, to be closer to him than anyone else possibly could. Brook, on the other hand, suggested that if Kendall were to adopt a more feminine attire, she would undoubtedly capture his attention. However, Kendall placed no importance on such matters. Her sole desire was to simply be by his side. From this, it's quite clear that Kendall is deeply infatuated with Prince Leuven. However, Brook remains firmly convinced that the female guard harbors feelings for him. It's truly unbelievable. Like most young ladies, Kendall is no exception. After repeatedly being asked by Brook to see her underwear, Kendall lets out a sigh of resignation. She wonders why, after all this time under her tutelage, Brook's way of speaking hasn't changed one bit. She explains that if Brook wants to ask someone for a favor, his attitude needs to be genuinely sincere and serious. Hearing this, Brook immediately begins to plead with Kendall to let him see her underwear, this time adopting a more solemn tone. However, immediately after this question, Brook receives a swift rap on the head from Kendall. What Kendall truly wants Brook to understand is the importance of prioritizing politeness and ethics over sweet talk, flattery, and insincere compliments. The strength of a person, she emphasizes, is directly proportional to their level of politeness and respect. Taking her words to heart, Brook resolves to behave appropriately and courteously from this point forward. Just as Queen Kendall had predicted, she earned the admiration and respect of everyone. Shuri's mother truly shone like the sun of this nation. Speaking of which, Brook also shares another story with Shuri. A long time ago, a world government ship was swept off course by ocean currents and ended up in Esperia. The presence of these celestial dragons was overwhelmingly terrifying, almost indescribably so. The Music Kingdom plunged into a deep abyss of chaos for an extended period. The inhabitants were genuinely panicked by such an oppressive and cruel regime, unlike anything they had ever experienced before. Overwhelmed by worry and distress, Queen Kendall was confined to her bed for many months. Understandably, the populace was plunged into deep sorrow and anxiety upon hearing this devastating news. Fortunately, following that ordeal, some good news emerged. Ciri's father, Prince Duan, was known for his rather fiery temperament. Not long after ascending to the throne as the new king, he declared his intention to marry his loyal royal guard, Kendall. Their wedding ceremony was met with widespread celebration and cheers from the residents of the entire kingdom. Sometime later, a princess was born. Her arrival illuminated the Music Kingdom with an abundance of joy and excitement. Princess Shuri was incredibly charming and beautiful, clearly inheriting her mother's exquisite looks. Realizing he had strayed from the main point, Brook steered the conversation back to why he cherished Shuri's parents so much. King Leuven and Queen Kendall had provided him with such significant assistance that he was prepared to lay down his own life for them. Noticing that Brook was primarily focused on her parents, Shuri felt a touch of jealousy. Of course, Brook assured her that he would also risk his life if Shuri were ever in danger. However, Shuri suspected Brook was only saying that because she was the daughter of the king and queen. To appease her, Brook produced a lollipop, which proved to be quite effective. Afterward, they resumed their swordsmanship practice together. Seeing his daughter constantly attached to Brook, King Leuven felt a pang of jealousy, while Queen Candle chuckled softly. In the days that followed, Brook and Shuri were inseparable. Brook was always the one to worry when Shuri faced any trouble, always the one to protect her, play with her, and accompany her. Similarly, when Brook was injured and bedridden, Shuri also became very worried. She even made an effort to learn cooking to prepare nourishing meals for him. It was thanks to Shuri's delicious cooking that Brook quickly regained his strength. When Shuri turned 15, a mysterious toxic smoke suddenly enveloped the kingdom. It caused music to vanish entirely, leaving only the incessant coughing of the citizens. The poisonous smoke spread everywhere, attacking the lungs of the residents and claiming countless lives. Asperia's treasures, including musical instruments, began to decay due to the noxious fumes. The thick fog gradually transformed into a completely opaque toxic mist. Faced with this dire situation, Brook attempted to use music to uplift everyone's spirits. Meanwhile, Queen Candle could only reassure the people that the fog would eventually dissipate. Due to the succession of bizarre and unbelievable events, Asperia continuously weakened and fell into a state of depletion. After some time the fog cleared, but the aftermath left the nation teetering on the brink of collapse. Most unexpectedly, Queen Kendall passed away after a prolonged battle with a severe illness. Her death cast a somber shadow over the entire realm. The entire atmosphere in the air grew heavier and more somber than ever before. This devastating tragedy completely broke their hearts, leaving Brook, Shuri, and King Leuven crying until they had absolutely no tears left to shed. To make matters worse, Asperia now faced a dire crisis, as they no longer possessed enough precious tribute to hand over to the demanding world government. But putting aside their immense grief, Shuri pushed forward, dedicating herself tirelessly to her swordsmanship training so she could grow as strong and capable as her late mother. Brook himself observed her progress and agreed that she had indeed become vastly more powerful, though he knew the king would never allow his beloved daughter to risk her life on the dangerous front lines of battle. Lately, the sovereign had also been deeply troubled and burdened by the looming issue of the tribute. Brook could clearly foresee the storm brewing on the horizon, but regardless of what trials lay ahead, he swore he would stand firmly by the king's side. Shuri suddenly recalled Brook once mentioning his grand dream of sailing the open seas as a pirate. Yet, Brook was determined to repay his deep debt of gratitude to this kingdom before even entertaining thoughts of pursuing his own freedom. Exactly as Brook had anticipated, King Leuven ultimately made the bold and dangerous decision to defy the oppressive world government. Brook didn't flinch or hesitate for even a single second, completely prepared to stand shoulder to shoulder with his dear friend through whatever hardships came their way. The corrupt authorities had demanded that Leuven hand over 1,000 of his own citizens as slaves in place of the missing tribute. But being dragged off to serve as a slave in the Holy Land is practically a fate worse than death itself. The countdown had begun, with the government's ships scheduled to arrive in exactly 2 months to claim their human cargo. However, King Leuven was absolutely resolute, swearing he would never surrender a single soul to those tyrants. Naturally, the kingdom's citizens were thrown into an absolute panic upon hearing this terrifying news, constantly turning to Brook for reassurance. To comfort their trembling hearts, the cheerful musician picked up his violin once more, playing a beautiful melody and singing to soothe their rising dread. All too soon, the dreaded deadline finally arrived, and the world government dispatched a massive force and a massive fleet of heavily armed warships to crush Asperia upon learning of their defiant rebellion. The brave soldiers of this musical nation fought back with everything they had, absolutely refusing to let the invading forces set foot upon their sandy shores. Brook charged headfirst into the chaotic battlefronts, unleashing his skills to cut down every single enemy soldier trying to conquer and destroy his home and threaten his friends. Upon receiving urgent word that the government's elite forces had breached the palace walls, Brook immediately sprinted back at top speed to protect the king and princess. Along his desperate run, he effortlessly tore through countless shadowy government agents blocking his path. Tragically, the beautiful, peaceful garden where Brook and Suri once shared quiet walks together was now completely engulfed in a raging sea of destructive flames. When he finally burst into the royal throne room, the horrific sight that greeted the Straw Hat Crew's future musician left him utterly paralyzed with shock. King Leuven lay slumped on the cold floor, defeated and bleeding before Princess Shuri's unsheathed blade. To make matters even more bizarre and terrifying, both of them had sprouted menacing horns from their heads and dark, demonic wings from their backs, clearly indicating that they had fallen victim to Imu's terrifying curse of reverse magic. Standing amidst the chaos was Saint Marcus himself, looming in his monstrous demon bird form, accompanied by another highly mysterious and shadowy figure. This mysterious man possessed a rugged, incredibly stern expression and was aggressively puffing away on a cigarette. Meanwhile, Princess Suri's face had gone completely cold as ice, her eyes blank and devoid of any conscious awareness. Witnessing this horrifying transformation sent waves of pure shock and absolute panic straight through Brook's entire body as he struggled to comprehend the nightmare before him. Currently, the Grand Kingdom of Vesperia is tragically engulfed in a massive roaring sea of fire. Despite the absolute chaos and danger, the loyal royal guardians are still fighting back with every single ounce of their strength. However, the sheer numbers of the government forces are simply too overwhelming, leading to their swift and brutal suppression. Meanwhile, back inside the royal palace, Brook is still utterly dazed, unable to comprehend the madness unfolding right before his eyes. Brook rushes desperately to the fallen king's side to assess his critical condition, screaming at the top of his lungs for immediate medical aid. As he looks at the tragic scene, vivid memories of their happy childhood flood his mind, making it impossible to hold back his tears. Watching Brook wail and scream in agony, Imu grows incredibly annoyed and irritated by the noise. Refusing to let anyone else witness this horrific spectacle, Imu unleashes a mysterious power to slam the massive palace doors shut. Shuri then cold-bloodedly declares that King Leuven is already dead. Horrified, Brook immediately points his sword directly at the enigmatic man standing there, demanding to know who on earth he is and what horrible things he has done to his beloved Princess Shuri. Brook had personally raised the young princess ever since she was a tiny child, meaning he knew her heart and soul inside out. There was absolutely no logical way that such a pure, kind-hearted soul could ever commit such an unspeakable act. Hearing Brook claim to know her so deeply, Shuri bursts into a cold, mocking laughter. She then shockingly reveals a dark truth, that she herself was actually born a celestial dragon, meaning King Leuven was never her real biological father at all. Brook stands there completely stunned, unable to wrap his head around the bizarre words coming out of Shuri's mouth. He firmly insists and believes with all his heart that she is indeed the true daughter of the king. Shuri fiercely fires back, arguing that she was destined to live a life of supreme luxury as a celestial dragon, and that Leuven's actions completely ruined her fate. She expresses intense rage over having wasted 16 long years of her life in this pathetic kingdom. The princess goes on to explain that the world government never actually demanded Leuven to hand over 1,000 slaves, because the sole prize they truly desired was her all along. Yet, Leuven stubbornly refused to surrender Shuri to them. In her eyes, he was an incredibly foolish and terrible ruler who allowed his own subjects to sacrifice their lives for absolutely nothing. Because of this, Shuri is determined to make Leuven pay dearly for his unforgivable sins. She claims that only when the king passes away will this devastating conflict finally draw to a close. Brook counters, warning her that if they lose this battle, their beloved home will degrade into a lawless, desolate wasteland. But Shuri couldn't care less, showing absolutely zero concern or affection left for this collapsing kingdom. It turns out the mysterious, imposing figure standing there is none other than the Holy Knight, Saint Manmeyer Grow. He remembers Brook's face perfectly, recalling how he used to be nothing more than a scruffy, curly-haired boy constantly serving at the side of the late Queen Candel. Back when Grow visited the kingdom of Vesperia, a low-ranking servant like Brook wasn't even permitted to approach him. But now, noticing that this powerful knight possesses the exact same distinct, dual-colored heterochromatic eyes as Shuri, Brook panics, losing his balance and falling backward in pure terror. Gro coolly remarks that he never had any desire to travel to such a remote, backward kingdom just to retrieve a mere child. However, Shuri happens to possess the extremely rare bicolored eyes that the Supreme Ruler Imu deeply covets. While Glow himself was never able to awaken the true power of these legendary eyes, this young princess has a very high chance of successfully doing so. Noticing that his subordinate is spilling far too many highly classified secrets, Imu sharply commands him to shut his mouth. Obeying his master, the Holy Knight then orders Shuri to execute Brook on the spot without hesitation. Realizing that Shuri is actually preparing to strike him down, Brook bursts into a fit of agonizing, desperate tears. He cries out, reminding her that he was the one who practically raised her, even changing her diapers when she was a helpless baby, proving how deeply he knows her true self. But Shuri coldly scoffs, telling Brook that his current weeping state is pathetic and utterly pitiful. She declares she wants to be protected by much stronger warriors, and once she reaches the Holy Land, she will have absolutely no use for him. Once she steps foot into the sacred Holy Land, Brook will become entirely obsolete to her. This heartless attitude is a far cry from the sweet angelic Shuri of the past, who was always incredibly kind to everyone around her. Now she looks and acts like a literal demon. Overwhelmed by grief, Brook blames himself entirely for failing to protect. Recognizing his failure, he decides to drop his weapon entirely, offering absolutely no resistance to his impending fate. Without a single shred of hesitation or mercy, Shuri drives her sharp blade right through Brook's head and coldly walks away, leaving with the formidable Holy Knight Gro. While it seemed like Shuri's brutal stab would certainly end Brook's life, a literal miracle occurred as the blade narrowly missed his critical veins and brainstem. Brook miraculously managed to survive the lethal blow, though it took an exceptionally long time for him to finally regain consciousness. Once he woke, the surviving Guardians informed him that they had suffered a crushing defeat, and their beloved king had indeed passed away. To make matters worse, the princess had already been loaded onto a world government vessel and taken away. Following this horrific tragedy, many citizens chose to flee Esperia, leaving the remaining Guardians completely lost with no destination in mind now that their kingdom was completely ruined and destroyed. Recalling the sheer trauma of those dark events, Brook breaks down sobbing in absolute horror and despair, which causes his healing wounds to painfully tear open once again. Fast forwarding to the present day, Brook explains that back then, he didn't even have the slightest clue that mystical items like devil fruits actually existed in their world. He simply assumed that the terrifying things he witnessed on that fateful day were nothing more than a wild hallucination. The tragic demise of his noble benefactor, combined with the sudden, shocking transformation of Princess Shuri, had filled his heart with profound fear. But reflecting on the recent bizarre events in Elbaf, he realizes that if those memories from his past are actually accurate, then it is highly probable that Shuri never truly turned evil of her own free will. Instead, she might just be an innocent victim, manipulated and controlled by some sinister force. Brook desperately desires to save his princess, bursting into tears as he bows his head low, begging his trusted companions to lend him their strength. Hearing Brook's heartbreaking tale, the crew members are deeply moved and incredibly outraged, instantly offering their full support to their grieving comrade. Refusing to waste another single second, Brook rushes off towards Shuri's location to break her free. Meanwhile, shifting our focus back to the Seahorse Academy, Luffy has stuffed his stomach completely full and is fully recharged and ready to dive headfirst back into the heat of battle. The fearless Straw Hat captain becomes absolutely furious upon learning that Imu is a sworn enemy of the Giants, instantly declaring that this tyrant is now his personal enemy as well. Brimming with sheer power and hype, Luffy is extremely confident that in his current prime condition, there is absolutely no way he will lose to anyone. With that declaration, our boy Luffy launches himself directly toward the battlefield, where Imu and Loki are fiercely clashing. After a brutal exchange of blows, Loki and Imu pause to trade heated insults, with Loki accusing the world government of being absolute cowards for deliberately targeting innocent children. Imu coldly retorts that trying to save those children was precisely the weakness that led to the total defeat of the Giants 800 years ago. He claims that the core essence and nature of a race can never be altered in just a few short centuries. As long as the next generation remains firmly in the clutches of the world government, Elbaf will always be forced to obey their every whim. And now history is bound to repeat itself once more. It is already far too late, as Elbaf is destined to remain under Imu's eternal servitude. Hearing this provocative taunt, Loki prepares to swing his massive hammer to crush the arrogant bastard standing right in front of him. But right at that critical moment, Luffy bursts onto the scene fueled by pure, unbridled rage. Caught completely off guard, Imu takes a devastating lightning-fast punch right to the face from our Straw Hat hero. Luffy screams for the bastard to get out of Elbaf, leaving Loki completely dumbfounded and staring wide-eyed at Luffy's incredibly epic and explosive entrance. This direct, powerful strike instantly sends Imu flying far back across the battlefield. But let's be real, a single hit like that is barely a scratch to the supreme ruler of the entire world. Right before hitting the dirt, Imu conjures up two eerie, pitch-black dark flames and fires them straight at Luffy and Loki. The arrogant Prince Loki can't help but comment that Luffy's punch actually packed a decent amount of heat, but he claims the only reason it did so much damage was because of the beatdown he had already given to Imu first. Talk about sore loser. Earlier, seeing how badly injured Loki actually was, Luffy kindly suggests the prince take a breather and rest up somewhere safe. Of course, hearing this completely rubs the proud prince the wrong way, and he gets furious, thinking Luffy is absolutely underestimating his true power. But before they can bicker further, they suddenly notice those creepy dark flames from before are stubbornly sticking to their bodies. The unlikely duo is totally baffled about what this dark magic is, frantically trying to brush it off. Meanwhile, Imu recovers in a flash, stepping back onto the scene while radiating an absolutely chilling, terrifying aura of pure bloodlust. Imu then weaves a hand seal, conjuring a strange flame right in the palm of his hand. Amazingly, just like Big Mom's living homies, this flame actually speaks. Under its master's grim command, the eerie flame immediately burrows itself right into the open stab wound Loki received earlier. Sensing that their foe is about to unleash an incredibly devastating attack, Luffy instinctively tries to rush in and put a stop to it, but it's already too late. After channeling a massive surge of dark energy, Imu materializes a colossal sword of pure demonic energy, launching it forward with blinding speed to pierce right through Loki's body, striking the exact spot where that creepy flame had attached itself to the prince. Meanwhile, nearby, the Straw Hat crew is desperately scrambling to shatter the massive block of ice and rescue Shuri. Nami even summons a powerful lightning strike to blast the ice, but frustratingly, it doesn't even leave a scratch. At that very instant, the brutal force of the blow sends Loki flying straight toward where the Straw Hats are gathered. Crashing hard against the massive block of ice, the giant prince slides heavily down to the ground. Right on cue, the legendary hammer, Ragnar, comes tumbling down from above, landing by sheer luck right on the frosty surface of the ice block that it had actually created beforehand. The Straw Hat pirates are completely shell-shocked to see Loki defeated like this, finding it hard to believe anyone could overpower such a beast. After taking two devastating, direct impalements, the giant prince is critically wounded, his immense energy rapidly fading away. Seeing his master in dire straits, Ragnar immediately transforms back into a cute little squirrel and scurries over to check on his master. Luckily, thanks to the hammer's perfect timing and placement, the stubborn ice block finally begins to melt away, which means our beloved princess is about to be saved. This sudden turn of events absolutely thrills Brook. Meanwhile, seeing that he is clearly the next target and realizing that the sinister black flame clinging to him is incredibly dangerous, Luffy quick-wittedly rips off his cloak and tosses it away. Sure enough, Imu's deadly demonic attack is unleashed, immediately tracking and blowing the discarded cloak to pieces. Seeing our rubber boy outsmart him like that catches Imu slightly off guard. Without wasting a single second, Monkey D. Luffy activates his legendary Gear 5 form, ready to clash head-on with Imu. "So, you have finally shown your face. Joy Boy," Imu utters coldly. But Luffy firmly and confidently declares, "Don't you dare call me by some other name, and nothing else matters. My name is Luffy, and I am the man who is absolutely going to become the king of the pirates." Hearing this bold declaration, Imu's mind suddenly drifts back to the ancient past, remembering the very first conversation he had with Joy Boy hundreds of years ago. The absolute ruler of the world was totally certain that Joy Boy had perished ages ago, yet something about this rubber kid constantly brings back vivid memories of that legendary figure. Suddenly, Imu charges forward, cloaking his left arm in a menacing dark energy, and unleashes a powerful punch right at Luffy. Our favorite pirate gets instantly annoyed when this villain keeps babbling on and on about ancient history that he has absolutely no clue about. To dodge the incoming strike, Luffy stretches his neck all the way down to the ground. But here is the shocker. Imu's own arm begins to warp, shifting its size and shape mid-attack. Caught completely off guard, Luffy takes the full force of that devastating blow and gets sent flying, crashing straight into the dirt, triggering a massive fiery explosion. The shockwave is so violent that the entire ground shakes to its core, kicking up a massive cloud of thick dust and smoke. Struggling through the wreckage, Luffy manages to pick himself up and spring back into action. He is incredibly ticked off about getting completely scorched and charred black, and he desperately tries to strike back at his foe with a counterpunch of his own. But Imu effortlessly evades the attack, literally teleporting right behind Luffy's back. He thrusts his massive blade directly at our rubber hero, who barely manages to dodge the lethal strike in the absolute nick of time. Refusing to back down, Luffy immediately goes on the offensive, unleashing a relentless barrage of consecutive rapid-fire punches, forcing Imu to frantically spin his blade to block the onslaught. Not a single one of Luffy's strikes connects, which leaves our captain incredibly frustrated. Keeping that same icy, expressionless stare, Imu weaves rapid hand signs and fires a concentrated blast of dark energy right at Luffy, triggering an absolutely colossal, earth-shattering explosion. Luckily, Luffy manages to dodge that devastating fire assault just in time, instantly turning tail and running away to scramble for a better game plan. But Imu is not about to give our rubber boy any breathing room. He fires off a barrage of homing dark energy spheres, determined to hunt him down. Luffy starts to panic as these relentless projectiles pursue him relentlessly like a shadow, clingy leeches. Seeing no other way out, he whips back around and uses a flurry of Gatling punches to shatter them to pieces. Realizing this opponent is insanely tough, Luffy suddenly undergoes a massive transformation, turning himself into a giant genie-like figure. He had been closely watching the clash between Loki and Imu, and loudly declares that the prince's sacrifice will absolutely not be in vain. Hearing this, Loki gets absolutely furious that Luffy already wrote him off as dead. Luffy happily waves at Loki, laughing with relief that the giant prince is actually still kicking. Unfortunately, this loud exchange immediately draws Imu's deadly focus right back onto Loki. Without hesitating, the villain fires a blast of dark energy, aiming to completely finish off the cursed prince once and for all. But Loki's incredibly loyal giant squirrel companion refuses to abandon its master, bravely rushing forward and spreading its tiny arms to shield him. Thankfully, Jinbei makes an epic entrance at the absolute perfect moment. Utilizing his powerful fishman karate, the helmsman of the Straw Hat Pirates successfully intercepts and completely blocks Imu's deadly flame assault. Jinbei yells out to Luffy, telling him to keep his full focus on the battle ahead, assuring him that he will personally handle Loki's protection. Luffy breathes a massive sigh of relief, feeling incredibly grateful for his reliable crewmate. He happily entrusts Loki to the noble fishman knight, declaring that Loki is officially their friend now. Hearing that, Loki gets even more irritated, snapping back, "Who on earth ever said I wanted to be friends with you guys?" Meanwhile, Nami and Usopp are completely dumbfounded by Luffy's bizarre new form, as well as the sudden arrival of this terrifying new foe. According to what Brook knows, there is actually someone else out there whose authority sits far above even the 5 elders, and even the Holy Knights themselves. Hearing this shocking revelation, Usopp deduces that the monster currently trading blows with Luffy must be their absolute supreme leader. Frankly, Brook notes that there is no organization in the entire world shrouded in more deep mystery than the world government. Meanwhile, the ice trapping the princess is finally being thawed out. The Straw Hat crew is gearing up to pull her to safety. Since they already have plenty of experience defrosting Luffy and Robin in the past, they handle the task without breaking a single sweat. Interestingly, Imu is quite surprised that this massive block of ice managed to survive his previous devastating attack. But when he hears Brook call out the name Suri, a flicker of recognition crosses Imu's mind as if remembering an old acquaintance. Right at that moment, Genie Luffy unleashes a devastating lightning-infused punch completely coated in Advanced Conqueror's haki. Yet, Imu effortlessly blocks the thunderous strike with just his right hand, while his left hand immediately begins weaving hand signs again. Imu has already shown Luffy the exact brutal fate that awaits anyone who dares to oppose him, just like what happened to Loki, yet our stubborn captain still refuses to grasp the gravity of the situation. At this very moment, Imu's dark, malevolent energy has already snaked its way up and clung tightly to Luffy's smoke-like beard. Immediately after, Imu conjures a terrifying dark sword and lunges directly at the Straw Hat captain, intending to skewer him just like he did to the cursed giant prince. Luckily, Luffy manages to shrink his giant body back down to normal size at the absolute last second, narrowly avoiding getting impaled. Having missed his target twice now, Imu once again unleashes a relentless volley of homing dark energy spheres to hunt Luffy down. He then folds his massive black wings and steps firmly onto the ground. Imu sheathes his heavy blade back into the dark halo floating behind his back, only to pull out an incredibly menacing pitch-black void sword from it. The ominous energy coming off this weapon is pure dread as Imu swings the blade in a single wide arc, causing the entire lush forest in front of him to instantly wither and decay into dust. Completely fed up with playing this cat-and-mouse game, Luffy aggressively charges headfirst straight at his opponent. But with the blinding speed of a lightning bolt, Imu closes the gap instantly, catching our rubber boy completely off guard. After an intense clash of pure power, Imu declares with absolute certainty that Luffy is definitely not the true Joy Boy, because the legendary figure he remembers would never be this pathetic and weak. Unleashing an overwhelmingly dark and oppressive aura, the secret ruler of the entire world drives his void sword clean through Luffy's chest. That is one absolutely mind-blowing cliffhanger to leave off on.